Chapter 195. Han Xiao had seen the impact of the information on the forum, and it was just as he had expected. He had once again tricked the germinal organization, and they did not even know who was messing with him or what went wrong. Sneaking around and doing bad things made him feel good all over. However, the faction recommendation letter was not popular, which surprised Han Xiao a little. He thought about it and knew the reason. This was determined by the current economic situation of the players. Although the guilds could gather 250,000, the risk was not small. If the recommendation letter was not effective, it would greatly slow down their development. This meant that the price he set was too high at this time. When the average wealth of the players increased, the risk of buying the recommendation letter would decrease. Only then would the guilds try to buy it. With this price, it will take a long time before the first person to try it appears. Han Xiao bit his nails and fell into deep thought. The best way is to lower the price, but that is impossible. It does not exist. Then, I can use the promotion strategy and give some other benefits in the recommendation letter. The first thing that came to Han Xiao's mind was the favorability reward. For example, he would give some favorability points when buying the recommendation letter. Favorability points were used as a prerequisite for high-level equipment in the shop. This was part of the profit chain. He felt that it was not appropriate to give favorability points, as the highest favorability points were only 100. The higher the favorability points, the more he would cherish them. He would only give 10 favorability points to normal players at most, and it would not exceed that. He could not let the players get it easily. If he used it on a recommendation letter, it would not be attractive if it was only 1 or 2 favorability points. If it was too much, it would be disadvantageous to him. Then, how about giving them equipment? As soon as this idea popped up, Han Xiao pushed it back down. He would not do such a thing. If he wanted to be a qualified businessman, he definitely could not be so conscientious. Recently, he had merged many new blueprints, but there were no finished products, so he cannot sell them. As for the potions, now was not a good time to sell them. The market for some potions with percentage bonuses would only expand when the players' levels were higher. Professional players who wanted to compete were the best target customers. Just as he was thinking, an unexpected notification appeared on the interface. Source of the grouper plague completed. Requirement 1. Find the source of the plague. Completed. Requirement 2. Stop the spread of the plague. Completed. Requirement 3. Cure all the plague victims. Incomplete. You have received 60,000 EXP, plus 400 Black Pine settlement favorability. Han Xiao was stunned. This mission was left to Madblade, Furious Sword, and Portbon. They had completed it, as expected of the person I've taken a fancy to. Han Xiao laughed. Madblade and Porkbun were both around level 15. This quest was a little difficult for them. Although they did not complete it perfectly, it was still a pleasant surprise. After all, Han Xiao had not interfered with this quest from the beginning. This meant that the reward was completely free. Wait a minute. Han Xiao's eyes lit up. He was suddenly inspired and thought of another way to promote the recommendation letter. Madblade, nice one. Han Xiao chuckled. This mission was completed in time and reminded him at the critical moment. It was simply like sending charcoal in the snow or an urn in the fire. At this time, the players in the novice village were learning energy training technique, one after another. At the same time, they were all amazed by the astronomical price of the recommendation letter. The string of zeros made them dizzy. Han Xiao suddenly said loudly, "The torrent of the times carries everyone forward. The truth that has been buried in dust will always be forgotten by those who cannot stop moving forward. I need some trustworthy people to help me with something." As he said that, he wrote new missions according to the 5 mission objectives of the hidden main storyline, New Era, Origin. The end of the lingering ones, the key to the lost, the dusty past, the mysterious prisoner, and fellow traveler. New Era, Origin was too cumbersome. If Han Xiao were to do it, it would waste a lot of time. Furthermore, this was only the first round. Han Xiao decided to split the mission objectives and share them with the players. This way, he could save time and reap the benefits. Madblade's success proved his idea. It turned out that he could also receive rewards when the players completed the mission. Just like an evil capitalist, he used benefits to attract others to work for him. However, he still earned the most. Furthermore, Han Xiao also indicated that this was a main storyline mission. This could further increase his status among the players. An NPC who gave out the main storyline mission. Damn, that must be an important person. This was probably what the players would think. When the players saw these missions, they were shocked. Then, it turned into ecstasy. It was as if they had reached a climax in an instant. Main storyline mission. Oh my god, this is another main storyline. There are so many rewards. Quickly accept the mission. However, the players found that the mission was gray and could not be accepted. They were shocked. Why can't I accept the mission? Why can't I accept it? Their doubts were quickly solved. They noticed that the mission actually had a prerequisite to buy a recommendation letter. That's right, it was that black-hearted. The players were speechless. What was there to play? 250,000. Who the F***CK could afford it? Looking at the players whose emotions were fluctuating and whose expressions were like impotence and constipation, Han Xiao secretly smiled. Due to the limit, his main storyline mission could only be given out in limited amounts. He could only choose to go the elite route. The target he wanted to attract was the professional players. Since the professional players had the support of the big guilds, he could use them to promote the recommendation letter and bundle the sales. Want the main storyline mission? Sure, buy my recommendation letter. Don't want to spend money? Then how can you become stronger? Professional players were willing to use any means to grow. They would never give up on the main storyline mission. Furthermore, Han Xiao had another reason for doing this. Normal players were not good enough and might cause him to fail the mission. Professional players, on the other hand, were more skilled and had the support of the big guilds. They had helpers when doing missions, so naturally they were more reliable. The rarer something was, the more valuable it was. He also added a key message in the mission introduction, saying that there was a chance to gain Black Phantom's favor and that there was a chance to unlock his hidden storyline by accepting the mission. The examples of Mad Blade, Pork Bun, and Maple Moon were not attractive enough. There were very few professional players who accepted the mission. Perhaps they thought that triggering the hidden storyline depended on luck, so they did not pay much attention to it. Han Xiao decided to give them a strong dose of medicine and let the professional players see a channel that had a higher chance of triggering Black Phantom's hidden storyline. Great strategy this time. This is a stone, so many birds. Grandfather Han was very satisfied. Little guys, I don't believe that you won't take the bait. The forum had the function of a chat room. At this time, a password chat room was flooded with people and the notifications kept ringing. Jade Green Sky has entered the chat room. Jupiter has entered the chat room. Morning Snow Twilight Frost has entered the chat room. I Cry Your Mother Collapses has entered the chat room. More than 10 people entered the chat room. They were all famous guild leaders in China. They knew each other and had a small circle. Is everyone here? Drizzle River's guild leader, Green Sky Rain, was the first to speak. I Cry Your Mother Collapses said, "Not yet." This sentence had a double meaning. Nine Doors Guild's guild leader, 339, asked, "Where's Old Chi? Can you help him?" Forget it. That kid spams the screen every day. Don't even think about talking about business with him around. Chrysanthemum Floor's guild leader, Cowherd Star, said, "Who booked the room? What business are we talking about?" Jupiter asked. Jade Green Sky interrupted. "Yo, isn't this one of the top esport players? I heard that Protoss has not been doing well recently." Trash guild leader, when are you going to be fired? I'll go to your club and set off firecrackers to celebrate. Jupiter, F***CK off. Morning Snow Twilight Frost sent a funny, smiley face. I Cry Your Mother Collapses said, Green Sky Rain, the pillar of thunderstorm, Rainy Jiang, has been very active recently. Can you help me get an autograph? Green Sky Rain, 3,000 for one, no deal. F***CK, are you robbing me? Don't you have any awareness of being a good guild leader? Cowherd Star interrupted, my autograph is free, do you want it? I Cry Your Mother Collapses said, F***CK off, your autograph is too hard to wipe my ass with. If it's Yao Yao's autograph, I might consider it. Yao Yao 7 Strings Bell. Don't try to please me, I didn't come in. Coward Star was not happy. Morning snow twilight frost sent a funny smiley face. Jupiter, stop joking. Let's talk about business. I'm very busy. Jade Green Sky. Forget it. You're just a mascot. Jupiter shouted, Get out of here. I Cry Your Mother Collapses said, Okay, I'll pull the topic back. You all saw the post on the forum, right? It's about the main storyline mission of Black Phantom. Yes, I saw it. What are you trying to say? Let's pool the money and let the pro players take on the main storyline mission of Black Phantom. You want to share the risk, right? But only one person can take on the mission. Why don't we pool the money ourselves? No, what I mean is we can cooperate and suggest that the pro players form a team to complete the mission. It's a healthy competition. Jade Green Sky. That's not a bad idea, but I need to ask for the team's opinion first. Coward Star. If I join, the club will definitely have no objections. 3-3 gets 9. I get both, Smiley/Jade Green Sky said. I remember now. The pro players of the Temple of God are all in the southern continent, right? We won't be able to meet Black Phantom anymore. You can't play with us, Jupiter. Quickly kick him out. This guy is now a spy sent to gather intelligence. Jupiter, spicy skin. Jupiter has left the chat room. Chapter 196. The players in this novice village were almost all harvested. Han Xiao counted his experience happily. It was another big harvest. However, until now, no one had come to buy the recommendation letter. But Grand Duke Han was not arrogant and was very patient. The news of him releasing the main storyline mission had caused a huge commotion on the forum. Sooner or later, someone would take the bait. There's only one novice village left. Maybe I should drag it out and give those big guilds time to raise money, Han Xiaoxin said. At this time, two players approached together. Their IDs were Windchaser and Dragontail, and they attracted the attention of the surrounding players. They were players from a Nine Gates Club and the Fanatics Club, and they were quite famous. Han Zhao's eyes lit up. Finally, the pro players were here. Black Phantom, we want to buy the recommendation letter, Windchaser said. Okay. Windchaser and Dragontail were sponsored by the guilds under the clubs. A team was the face of a club, and as professional players, they had this privilege. The two of them took out $250,000 each. The surrounding players craned their necks and looked envious. They had never seen such a huge amount of money before. There are actually people who can afford it. The big guilds are really rich. No wonder the pro players are better than us. If I had such resources, I could be a pro player too. You think just anyone can sign a contract with a club? A player suddenly had an idea. We'll be rich if we steal their money. Don't be stupid. Not to mention that the pro players can kill you. Even if you really get it, the guilds will definitely chase you to the ends of the earth. Maybe Black Phantom will kill you first. Everyone was discussing. With $500,000 in his account, he wrote the recommendation letter on the spot and handed it to the two pro players. Han Xiao told them about a Darknet stronghold in the Western continent and said, You can join the Blood Pact Society if you bring my letter there. He paused and said, I seem to be able to trust you. There are some jobs here. Are you willing to help? That's what I'm waiting for. Dragontail could not wait to accept the mission. After accepting one, he wanted to accept another, but he was notified that he could only accept one mission in the series and could not accept other missions at the same time. This was set by Han Xiao. One recommendation letter for one mission. F***CK. I can only accept one quest. I thought I could accept all the quests. Ferocious Dragon Swings Its Tail was dissatisfied. Han Xiao raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, It's fine if you don't want to do it. Ferocious Dragon Swings Its Tail immediately shut up. If he didn't accept the mission, wouldn't he be wasting his money? Windchaser could only helplessly choose the same mission. The two clubs cooperated and formed a team to complete the mission. Fortunately, the mighty dragon swings its tail mission was in the West Continent. If you can complete this mission, I might have more things that I need your help with. Han Xiao hinted that if he wanted to unlock his hidden storyline, he had to complete this mission first. The professional players raced against time and left immediately after receiving the mission. Of the 5 mission targets, 2 were in the West Continent, 2 were in the North Continent, and 1 was in the South Continent. He had to make sure that someone would accept all of them. It just so happened that all 3 continents were on his itinerary. Although the main mission was of A-rank difficulty, this was only the first part of the mission. Han Xiao separated the main mission into small missions of D-rank difficulty. He could afford it with the amount of experience he gave out. When the difficulty gets higher in the later parts, I might not have enough experience points. Han Xiao felt that he needed a channel to increase his experience points. There was no hope for him to level up now, so he could only start from the faction and legendary level. Wind Chaser and Mighty Dragon Swings Its Tail are normal professional players. They didn't seem to have a particularly good battle record in my previous life. I'll observe them for now. Han Xiao was very strict with his choice of backups. He didn't pull them in every time he saw a professional player. Fanatics and Nine Gates announced that their players had bought the recommendation letter on the forum. It was equivalent to advertising and increasing the fame of their clubs. Many players were watching and cheering for them. Because of the advertisements of the 2 clubs, Han Xiao had also indirectly gained fame. It was conceivable that in the future, the clubs that bought the recommendation letters would follow suit, and Han Xiao estimated that he would gain fame on the forums many times. Without stopping, Han Xiao came to the last novice village in the Western continent. While harvesting experience points, there were also new professional players who squandered their guild's wealth in exchange for the opportunity to accept missions. The ordinary players could only watch with envy. The other main mission in the Western continent was also accepted by a professional player. Han Xiao was finally relieved. He leisurely sold his skills and paid attention to the forum and dark web. Hey, Galaxy Times has published a new issue. The subtitle is Pro League Formation. Han Xiao was excited. He had been paying attention to this program and immediately clicked on it. Hello, players, the male host said. This is Galaxy Times, dedicated to sharing first-hand game information and protecting your gaming career. Xiao Chun, I've been very anxious recently, the female host said. What's wrong, Xiao Xiao? I've fallen in love with a man. He doesn't talk much, and he's handsome. He's cold and aloof, but he never looks at me or talks to me. Don't worry, I think you're a perfect match for him. The female host was pleasantly surprised. Really? Of course, he's cold and aloof, and you're short and hot. It's a perfect match. It was the same awkward joke at the beginning of every episode. This style made Han Xiao feel so familiar with it that he almost peed his pants. The bullet screen was filled with ridicule and ridicule. There were many players who watched Galaxy Times. It had been less than a month since it started broadcasting, and it had already become an authoritative program in the eyes of the players. After all, it had an official background and had a lot of first-hand information. After chatting for a while to liven up the atmosphere, the male host said, Okay, let's get back to the topic. Today's program will analyze the hottest inhuman phenomenon and the movements of the professional players. We also invited Li Gu to the studio. Don't leave. The content of the program was still very detailed. At the beginning, it went through the current progress of the players on each planet and commented on the level rankings. Now, among the players, the highest level Vanguard is approaching the level 20 mark. Level 20 will be the first advancement. I don't know who will get this honor, but the first player to successfully advance will be recorded in the history of the game. Then, as you can clearly see, among the players at the top of the level rankings, there are basically no professional players. Among them, there are the most Japanese players. As everyone knows, Japan's base is Planet Lani, where technology and magic coexist. The Crystal Civilization is at its peak, and it's very suitable to take on missions to level up. France and America also have a lot of players, but there are not many Chinese players on the list. Oh, I saw an old acquaintance, Maple Moon. You remember her, right? When the open beta started, she received more than 100,000 EXP. That was also the first prize pool mission that all the players had encountered so far. Speaking of Black Phantom, he has been attracting the attention of the players on Planet Aquamarine since the beginning of the game. Recently, there have been new developments. He has been appearing in the newbie village to provide guidance and benefits. Not long ago, he showed another main storyline mission, and the prerequisite is an extremely expensive item worth 250,000 aquamarine dollars. If players from other planets want to understand the concept of price, You can go to the exchange rate board and see the amount of resources that can be exchanged for 250,000 aquamarine dollars. Chapter 197. The male host suddenly changed the topic. Recently, a phenomenon has sparked widespread thought and discussion. The NPCs in the game have shown great curiosity due to the characteristics of the players. Every novice planet has a different reaction, such as the Chosen One phenomenon, the Inhuman phenomenon, the Genius phenomenon, and so on. This can't help but feel surprised and excited. It's as if the NPCs have independent thoughts and are not as inflexible as in other games. If every NPC has an independent logical thought, the calculation capacity will be terrifying, but Galaxy uses the latest generation of photon processors, and no one knows its limits, the female host said. The comments flew up, and the spectating players made one guess after another. The NPCs had independent thoughts, and the freedom of interaction was almost the same as in the real world. It was too novel. The two hosts read the script and summarized the different phenomena of each planet. They only made some guesses in the program. From the player's point of view, they could only know the attitude of the NPCs they came into contact with, but they could not know the secret reaction of each organization. However, Han Xiao knew that the recent darknet intelligence was almost all about coming into contact with Inhumans. The increasing number of players was already pressuring the major organizations. The major organizations all agreed that if the number of Inhumans kept increasing, there would be endless hidden dangers, and it would cause a huge impact on the overall situation. However, they could not find a way to suppress the growth of the Inhumans. Luckily, the Inhumans were weak and easy to control. At this time, the major organizations of Blue Star had not discovered the characteristics of the rapid growth of the players. Before LV-20, their combat power was still in the range of normal people. Han Xiao shook his head helplessly. When the players' levels are high, these organizations will be stunned. The topic of the Inhuman phenomenon came to an end. The male host said, "We have invited Li Gu to be our guest." "Hello, Li Gu." The second god of China, Li Gu, appeared in the camera. He sat in the middle of the hosts with a smile on his face. Galaxy Times often invited top players for interviews to share information and opinions. The female host asked Li Gu what he thought of the Inhuman phenomenon. "I feel that this is part of the game's plot, to increase the player's immersion and sense of reality. When I was playing, I often had the illusion that this was the real world. I think this is the experience that the developers want to give us, the feeling of being a special part of the real world. Every experience is random, and there are very few similar events. It is very novel and exciting. I'm very optimistic about the future of Galaxy." The male host said, "Speaking of the future of the game, our station has received first-hand information. The International Esports Association has confirmed that they will host the first Galaxy Pro League and allow countries to hold secondary competitions. What do you think about this? It's probably the feeling that I haven't lost my job." Liga smiled. "Seriously, all the esports giants from all over the world have joined Galaxy. They will definitely be preparing for it. I think this will be a fierce battle. I hope I can lead China to a good result." The bullet screen became densely packed. The formation of the Pro League made the players very excited. This was going to be a big event. At the same time, the bullet screen was mixed with comments from fangirls such as, "Li Gu is so handsome," and "My husband is so cute." The competition has been established. The professional players need to prepare quickly. "Do you have any experience that you can share with us?" Li Gu thought about it and said, "Us pro players need to allocate EXP according to the characteristics of our abilities. We don't rush to level up. We need to play it safe and familiarize ourselves with the controls at every level to train our skill. That's why there are almost no professional players on the level leaderboard. Oh, there are a few in Japan. Everyone knows that they are very prideful. We professional players need to grasp every opportunity to grow. Recently, our Blue Star's Black Phantom has become very famous. I think I will try my luck too, provided that he returns to the southern continent." Li Gu was helpless. The rest of the program was mostly chit-chat. After watching it, Han Xiaoxin said, "The Pro League has been established. All the big clubs will hurry to prepare. My customers will probably increase. Liga said that he would look for him too. This was the second best player in China. Han Xiao did not even have the qualifications to meet Li Gu in his previous life. But now, Han Xiao had the right to decide whether to let him be his backup. Li Gu, we'll see when the time comes. Frenzied Sword and Bun Hit Dog were doing missions in Black Pine. Black Pine was not a place for players of their level, and the missions were very difficult. However, Frenzied Sword was a professional player after all, and his skill was there for all to see. He also had the equipment that Han Xiao had provided him, so he was doing very well and was growing very quickly. Through the various missions at Black Pine, he had obtained new equipment and new skills. However, in Mad Blade's heart, these things could not fill his heart. Instead, they made him feel even more empty. Thinking of Han Xiao, Mad Blade's heart was filled with longing. Only by following him could he understand the true meaning of life. Compared to that, the missions at Black Pine were not attractive at all. When will he come back? Mad Blade was very melancholy. Outside the quarantine area at Black Pine, Liu Cheng looked surprised. He said to Mad Blade, "To be honest, you surprised me. You successfully stopped the plague." Mad Blade was unhappy. Pork Bun pulled him aside, and he came back to his senses. He answered absent-mindedly, "Oh." At first, when Black Phantom left the two people behind to help solve the plague, Liu Cheng did not think much of it. However, he soon realized that the two people were really useful. Their ability to revive meant that they were not afraid of infection. They could do many things that researchers did not dare to do. The plague in the settlement stopped spreading with the help of the two people. The mild cases were cured, and the number of people in the quarantine area decreased significantly. Liu Cheng had always been very surprised by the Inhumans' characteristics. He also asked the garrison in Green Valley Town to study those refugees. Now, they were called Inhumans. He contacted some of his friends from other forces and found out that Inhumans were everywhere in the world. As the Inhumans' range of activities expanded, even the Six Nations could not hide it from the civilians. As their levels increased, the players in the novice village gradually explored the map. Many people left Green Valley Town, and some of them came to Black Pine. Liu Cheng tried to use the method that Han Xiao taught him to treat the Inhumans as mercenaries. He was surprised to find that Han Xiao showed him a way. Earn reward? Bun Hit Dog reminded Liu Cheng, who was distracted. Mad Blade looked at Pork Bun with disdain. When doing missions, he did almost everything alone. Pork Bun was leisurely recording at the side like a big boss. He even had the face to ask for rewards. Liu Cheng laughed and asked his subordinates to give the promised rewards to the two of them. Counting the money and equipment in his hands, Mad Blade studied the attributes description seriously. The Pro League had been formed, and he felt the pressure. Whenever he had time, he would study battle techniques. Poor Bun was very casual. He was browsing the forum. Suddenly, he said in surprise, "Black Phantom is doing something new again. He can even give out main storyline missions." Yeah, why didn't he mention this to us? We triggered his hidden storyline. Why didn't we get this treatment? Mad Blade's face tightened. He said in a deep voice, "When he comes back, he will definitely give us the main storyline mission." Where did your confidence come from? Pork Bun was suspicious. Chapter 198. The weather was sunny, and in a place that looked like a military camp in Star Dragon, many players were streaming in and out like a small market. Star Dragon's attitude toward the players was gentler. They held many internal meetings and tried to command the players. They found that they could communicate normally with normal people, but some of the Inhumans seemed to have some mental issues. However, it was not a big deal. In the end, they decided to form a special unit for the players to serve in the army. This military camp was an area specially open for the players. Star Dragon's officers gave missions here, and many players set up stalls and asked to form teams. Gradually, the camp became prosperous. Due to Han Zhao's influence, many players chose to join Star Dragon, including Maple Moon. Fighting and killing were not Maple Moon's cup of tea. She liked to collect all kinds of materials, build machines, and sell them to other players. Many players liked to come to her for supplies and repairs, so in doing missions, Maple Moon could easily find a team and was very popular. Maple Moon was only a casual player, and she spent less time online than other players. She preferred to enjoy the game and would not do missions mechanically. She liked to pester the NPCs and ask them questions, which wasted a lot of time. Even so, with the help of the prize pool mission that Han Xiao gave her, she still surpassed most players and became one of the top few players in terms of level. In a tent, Maple Moon looked at her experience bar and was very excited. Almost LV20, I will be able to find Black Phantoms soon. A cold wind blew across the wasteland. Thin snow was scattered everywhere, and the bare ground was gray and white. In a flat wasteland in the northern continent, a player wearing an animal skin coat was slowly trekking in the cold wind. At the end of the horizon, behind him, was a novice village. He was leaving the novice village. His fists were covered in blood, and 100 meters behind him were the corpses of 7 frost wolves. Frost wolves were a common predator in the northern continent, and they were around LV10. Facing 7 frost wolves, a normal player at this stage had less than a 20% chance of winning. However, this player only had a few shallow claw marks on his body. The ID above his head was Hao Tian, and it was obvious that it was an old ID. Hao Tian, a famous pro god, the pillar of Club Long Sky, a veteran who had been in the pro scene for many years. He had also used this ID for many years. There were many clubs in the Chinese esports scene, but only 4 of them were known as the top clubs. They were Temple of God, Long Sky, Dynasty, and Fried Eggplants with Fish. It seemed like something strange had been mixed in, but that club was indeed called Fried Eggplants with Fish, and its archenemy was Korea's Kimchi Club. Hao Tian suddenly received a long-distance communication request from Farewell Song and stopped in his tracks. This question perfectly reflected Hao Tian's characteristic of not liking nonsense. Li Gu said, "Have you heard? The Esports Association has confirmed the formation of the Galaxy Pro League." "Oh, what profession did you change to?" "Martial Dao. I'm a psychic." Li Gu said, "Hurry up and level up your accounts. The situation of the Chinese players is not good. I need help to deal with the foreign players. Mind your own business." Hao Tian hung up the call without hesitation. They were both gods, but Li Ji's style was completely different from his. Hao Tian had been in the pro scene for many years. He had trained steadily to get to where he was today. He did not like to talk, and he did not like to manage his public image. He was completely focused on shining in the pro scene. Li Gu was very passionate about managing his own image. He often attended shows, and his fan base was dozens of times larger than Hao Tian's. He was also very handsome and had a lot of female fans. Furthermore, Li Gu was the kind of genius who could surpass others without much effort. Every pro player had talent, and Li Gu was full of it. Some people were just geniuses, and there was no room for reasoning. Many people admired Li Gu, and many people were jealous of him. Hao Tian did not belong to the two. He had known Li Gu for a long time, and he did not have any other feelings. In his eyes, Li Gu was just a strong peer, and he did not care about other factors. Li Gu was also his old rival, and Hao Tian had lost to him many times. This time, in order to achieve more in Galaxy, he basically spent the entire day leveling up his account. He did not want to miss any opportunity. Hao Tian opened the forums out of habit and saw the posts of players uploading Han Zhao's main mission. He suddenly stopped, turned around, and walked back to the novice village. With Hao Tian's strength, the novice village was useless to him, but for Black Phantom's mission, he was willing to wait. Star Dragon, underground of the Dragonhorn Building, Division 13 headquarters. In the deep metal corridor leading to the mainframe, red dots flashed in the gaps of the steel walls. Infrared detectors covered the entire corridor, and the floor was equipped with devices to identify weight and footprints. Gu Hui entered the passcode at the door, and his pupils, fingerprints, and voice were detected. He stepped into the corridor, and in less than a second, the mainframe recognized Gu Hui's identity through the floor and infrared detectors. Authorization verified. "Welcome, Director." A synthetic mechanical voice sounded, indifferent and emotionless. All the defense devices went into hibernation mode, and the green light was on. Gui walked into the spacious mainframe operation room with a serious face. He was there with the order from the highest leader to consult Ghidorah, which was far away in the depths of the universe, about the inhuman phenomenon. This was a matter of great importance, and all the surveillance cameras in the mainframe room were pointed at him. The leaders were watching. Gui knew that not only Star Dragon, but other countries would also do the same. The inhuman phenomenon was too strange, and they had no solution at all. They could only seek help from galactic civilizations. Ghidorah was the only advanced civilization they had come into contact with, and they were neutral and friendly. They had never interfered with Blue Star. Gui turned on the mainframe, entered a long series of passwords, and unlocked all the encryption. He then opened the bottom layer of the program and entered a secret code, which activated a secret program. The screen suddenly turned white, and then a new interface popped up. It was simple and plain, and there were countless options listed on it. However, they were all gray and could not be selected. The names were all strange symbols. These were the words of the Ghidorah civilization. There was only one option that could be activated, and it was translated into Blue Star's language. Communication window between Ghidorah Sector 9 and Blue Star. This was a Sector 9 communication terminal model called Light Feather. The 6 regimes of Blue Star had all received interstellar communicators from Ghidorah and could connect with other galactic civilizations. Blue Star's technology had not yet been able to figure out the principle of how the interstellar communication terminal could send and receive signals. It seemed to be a very mature quantum entanglement communication technology. Ghidorah had locked many functions of the terminal and closed hundreds of communication network links to the outside universe. Blue Star could only communicate with Ghidorah's base in Sector 9, and Blue Star could only use 1/millionth or 1/millionth of the interstellar communication terminal. They could only understand the structure of the universe through Ghidorah. However, Blue Star had no choice. Gui calmed himself down and clicked on the option. The 10 seconds of waiting felt like hours. Finally, the screen flashed, and a dialog box appeared. Human for Blue Star. Why do you want to communicate? The cold Ghidorah language on the other side suddenly turned into Blue Star language. This was the translation function of the terminal. Gui went through the script that he had prepared in advance in his mind and typed it word by word. Friend of Ghidorah, I am the person in charge of the Blue Star Star Dragon Intelligence Agency. This communication is to inquire about a strange phenomenon that has occurred on our planet. We call it the inhuman phenomenon. The details are as follows. Gui briefly explained their research on the Inhumans and sent detailed research files and records. In the end, he wrote, "We are unable to find the cause with our technology. We hope that you can solve the problem. If you can lend us a hand, we will express our sincere gratitude. Ghidorah and Star Dragon will always be close friends." Chapter 199. A few seconds later, Ghidorah's receptionist answered. There are many technologies that can achieve this effect, and it could also be a natural phenomenon. There have been stranger phenomena in the universe before, so there's no need to be surprised. Tens of thousands of new races are born and die every second. If we want to find out the cause, we have to do the research ourselves. This is what we're looking forward to, Gui said. I hope you can send someone to investigate. Request accepted. Current time, Galaxy Calendar, Year 688, August 10th. Mission schedule, May 15th, Year 689, arrival July 5th. The galactic calendar was set by the 3 giant civilizations, and it was used throughout the universe. However, some places still use their own calendar, just like how the locals still use dialects even though Mandarin was popularized. The galactic calendar was basically only used when different civilizations communicated, as it was convenient to calculate time. That long? Gui was shocked. All activities follow the schedule. Requests need to be lined up. I've already received requests from other governments on your planet, so I'll handle them at the same time. Ghidorah's receptionist answered in a rigid manner. Gui felt a sense of familiarity. He thought about it and realized that this was the same tone that the relevant departments used. Ending the call, Gui was helpless. We still have to wait a year. After a year, Who knows what the inhuman phenomenon will be like? Guhui shook his head. Luckily, the Inhumans can be communicated. They're passionate about being mercenaries, so we can control it to a certain extent. The highest level of Star Dragon held a meeting. Since the inhuman phenomenon could not be dealt with for the time being, they had to seize the opportunity to start a war with the Germinal organization before the situation worsened. They had to destroy the Germinal organization and prevent the Germinal organization from using this phenomenon to stage a comeback. Preparations for an expedition war were started again. Thud, thud, thud. Her military boots stepped on the cold metal floor. Hela was expressionless as she walked through the maze-like metal corridors. She did not hesitate when she faced the intersection. She was very familiar with this area. This was where Aurora was locked up. At the end of a long corridor, a thick metal door blocked Hela's view. She walked over with light steps. The automatic defense machine gun array in the corridor was always aimed at her, as if it would fire at any time. 2 guards stood in front of the metal door, one on the left and one on the right, blocking Hela in front of the door. I have the authority. Hela's tone was cold. The guard turned sideways and tapped on the control panel of the metal door a few times to confirm that Hela had received a one-time authorization from the leader. He nodded and said, "You only have 1 hour." He opened the metal door, and light leaked out, illuminating Hela's delicate but cold face. A pure white room was reflected in her eyes. The structure was simple. There was a bed, a table, a chair, a bookshelf full of books, and a toilet. On the bed that was as white as an angel's feather, a thin and small body was curled up under the blanket. Hela walked forward absent-mindedly and stopped 5 meters away from the room. She stretched out her hand and pressed it against the transparent glass of the isolation room. She couldn't go any further. The corners of her eyes trembled. The palm that was pressed against the glass suddenly clenched into a fist. He used so much force that even his knuckles turned white. "Sister?" The blanket wriggled, and a small head popped out of the blanket. Her movements were cautious. She had a head of green stubble, delicate features, and an abnormally pale face. It seemed that she had been malnourished for a long time and lacked light. Her big eyes were blinking. When she saw Hela, she was pleasantly surprised. Aurora lifted the blanket and staggered to the mirror. Her steps were weak and weak. She was wearing a loose hospital gown. Her bare arms were full of scars from needles. Her body was thin and small, as if she was so thin that only her bones were left. Her height was only up to Hela's collarbone. Aurora threw herself in front of the mirror. Both of her hands were pressed against the glass. Her face was full of joy. "You came to see me." Hela hurriedly stretched out her hands. Separated by the glass, the 2 pairs of palms pressed together. Hela's nose twitched. She held back her sobs and asked softly, "Have you been well recently?" "The doctor in the white coat is coming less and less often. The last injection was 13 days ago." Aurora blinked her big eyes and revealed a heartless smile. Hela forced a smile. Her eyes swept over the needle holes on Aurora's body. Her heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. She knew why the doctor came less and less frequently. It was because Aurora's recovery was getting slower and slower. Every time the doctor took blood and bone marrow, Aurora needed a longer time to recover. The power of the dead could sense vitality. Aurora, who was once as bright as the sun, was now like a candle flame that could be blown out by the wind at any time. The flame of life was weak. Her vitality was withering. "Sister, tell me a story. I want to hear the one you didn't finish last time." Aurora sat down with her arms around her knees and looked up at Hela. Hela also sat down, leaned against the glass, and said softly, "Where did we leave off last time?" Aurora tilted her head and thought for a while. "That uncle called Zero escaped from a base. What happened after that? Did you fight with him?" Hela's eyes drifted away. With a gentle tone, she continued the story. In the Germinal Organization headquarters, in the leader's room, a row of senior officers stood in front of the desk, reporting the situation of the organization. The leader sat up straight. No one could see the expression hidden behind the mask. His black-gloved hands were crossed under his nose, and he said in a deep voice, The inhuman phenomenon has distracted the Six Nations, but it won't be for long. At least the Inhumans have bought us some time to rest. Be prepared. The enemy will invade Andrea at any time. All the senior officers nodded. The leader glanced around and paused. Where's Cyberlos? There have been breakthroughs in a few research projects recently. He's busy. The leader suddenly stood up and strode away. Alux was so moved that tears welled up in his eyes. After a month of torture, he was finally released. It was not easy. Although he was in prison, Alux had always been paying attention to the forums and knew that the Germinal organization had captured some other players. After he was released, he was assigned to a special team made up of players called the Inhuman Team. They were all unlucky players who had been brainwashed and were bound to a faction. His level was far behind, but Alux was confident that with his grade of potential Esper ability, as long as he leveled up, he would definitely be stronger than the other players. A foreign player like him was not rare. There would always be some casual players who would not care about whose home planet was and would only choose a novice planet based on their interests. Every novice planet had casual players from various countries. Organizing the brainwashed Inhumans into a small team was Cyberlos' suggestion. He had gotten the leader's permission. He felt that the Inhumans who could be resurrected had strategic value and could play a miraculous role in war. The leader had sent combat instructors to create training and actual combat plans specifically for the Inhumans. At this time, Cyberlos was in another laboratory. In front of him was a specially sealed chamber. Beside him, the researchers were methodically adjusting the equipment. There was an experiment going on inside, and painful and crazy screams could be heard. After a long time, the sealed chamber quietened down. The valve opened, and the chamber door slid open, revealing the thing inside. It was a man with all kinds of mechanical exoskeleton parts all over his body. The joints were all rooted in the bones. Other than his face, the rest of his skin had been replaced with a kind of flexible metal. His bald head was shiny, and it looked very futuristic. His body was huge, and his whole body was equipped with exoskeletons, making him look like a steel beast. Chapter 200. How do you feel? Number 1 opened his eyes. His eyes had been modified. His pupils flashed with red light, and his vision could zoom in and out like a sniper scope. He looked down at his metal-skinned palms and moved his fingers. Better than ever. Number 1 swung his fist, and the exoskeleton hummed. He smashed a hole in the steel wall. His hideous smile gradually widened and finally turned into a maniacal laugh. After enduring endless pain, he finally obtained supernatural power. The surging confidence intoxicated him. In front of this power, Number 1 suddenly realized that Zero, who had killed him before, was just a weak little chick that could be crushed easily. They were no longer on the same level. Zero, before I find you, don't die in the hands of others. Number 1's eyes were ferocious as he muttered to himself, "You're mine." Cyberlos walked out of the lab and reported to the leader. Due to the early schedule, the experiment is not mature yet. Only Number 1 can survive all the modifications. He's the only completely modified body, Cyberlos said. It's hard to imagine that he can withstand all the torture. The leader's tone was indifferent. He died in Zero's hands. Hatred made his will indestructible. About Zero, Cyberlos narrowed his eyes. If he really has the ability to foresee, we have to get rid of him before the war. Otherwise, our strategic deployment will be exposed. He's like a rat in the sewer, hiding too deep. The leader folded his hands and made a decision. Activate Destiny's Child and find his location. Cyberlos smiled. He had always been very interested in Destiny's Child. The two walked through the twisting corridors and passed through the gates that required more and more authority. The security here was very tight. Teams of elite night owls patrolled the corridors, and their footsteps were orderly. There was a well-hidden secret room here. The leader came to the door and entered the password. Then, it was fingerprint identification. He took off the gloves he had been wearing, revealing his palms. Hideous scars covered his palms, as if they had been bitten by wild beasts. There were also scars on his fingertips. After the identification, the leader put the gloves back on. The metal door moved and slid to the side. Only the leader had the authority to open this door. Inside was a hibernation pod. A man with a metal mask on his face was lying in the pod hibernating. The nutrient solution ensured that his body would not die. The leader operated the hibernation pod and injected the awakening potion. The pod door opened, and the man slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were like a pool of stagnant water, and he didn't care whether he was asleep or awake. This person was known as the Child of Destiny by the Germinal organization. He had a special ability to influence the future through language. Even the Germinal organization did not know the details. The leader waved his hand behind him, and his subordinate handed over Zero's file. The leader showed it page by page. Destiny's Child's gaze did not change as he flipped through the pages. After flipping through it once, the leader repeated it again and said in a deep voice, "Let him show himself." Destiny's Child finally blinked. The leader took out a special key and opened the Child of Destiny's metal mask. Destiny's Child closed his eyes. After a full 5 minutes, he opened his eyes and slowly said in a hoarse voice, "He will walk right into the trap and come here." The leader's breathing paused. "Time. Not too long. I hope it works this time." Cyberlos shook his head. Destiny's Child's ability would not succeed every time. The smaller the requirement, the higher the success rate. The leader put on the metal mask for Destiny's Child and pushed him back into the pod to sleep again. The guards outside the door carefully poked their heads out and looked at each other in confusion. Why are the leader and Mr. Cyberlos talking to themselves in the air? After staying in the last novice village in the Western continent for 3 days, Han Xiao could not wait to board the plane and leave. His next stop was the Northern continent. The average level of the players was getting closer to LV20, and Han Xiao had to speed up his journey. The sky was full of stars outside the porthole, and the plane flew in the dark clouds. After setting the route, it flew steadily. In the night sky, the galaxy was bright, and it was reflected in Han Xiao's mirror-like eyes, bright and magnificent. Looking at the night sky, Han Xiao would always think of those shining stars, countless civilizations built, and countless opportunities in the depths of the universe. It was extremely lively. Han Xiao knew this very well. Every time he thought of it, he would feel a surge of ambition. The journey of a man is the sea of stars. He had already gained a foothold in the blue star, and this was the starting point. The more trump cards he accumulated here, the more confident he would be. Opening the interface, Han Xiao counted his gains. After staying in the Western continent for more than 10 days, he had obtained a bunch of potions. One of them was a semi-finished potion with unknown effects, but might be very valuable. He had also gained more connections, such as Dion, 2 superheroes with unknown uses, Hannes, and the others. He had also triggered a hidden main storyline. He had also created the mechanical suit, Viper Modification. Viper Modification could greatly increase his strength and agility attributes, making up for the weakness of a mechanic in the early stages. In Han Zhao's mind, Viper Modification was the second battle plan, and it was still in its early stages. He still had to add new modules to the mechanical suit to increase its combat capabilities. The sniper style was for assassination, kiting, and concealment. Viper Modification was for Han Xiao to fight head-on. In fact, he had already come up with a few modifications in his mind. The biggest gain was the EXP and money from the 4 novice villages. Energy training technique was selling like hotcakes. Just as Han Xiao had expected, the profit it brought him was astronomical. 120 million EXP. Over 100 million EXP. Those who could afford the energy training technique were all players who grew faster. Not everyone could afford it. On the other hand, the class advancement knowledge and basic skills were the most popular, and they were worth an additional 20 million experience points. The EXP accumulated on the interface was 140 million EXP. Looking at the long string of zeros, Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed. Even for players of the same level, this amount of EXP was still an astronomical figure. Some players might not even reach this amount of EXP in the entire version 1.0. Awesome! Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed. For a long time in the future, he would not need to worry about EXP. As long as he could solve the two big hurdles of class advancement and class advancement, his level would increase exponentially. He could also level up his skills freely. It would not take much effort for him to level up all his skills except for the blueprints. Most importantly, he could fuse blueprints in large batches to fill up his inventory. Not only did he gain EXP, but he also earned 3,600,000 aquamarine dollars from energy training technique. He also sold 5 recommendation letters, which added up to 4,850,000 EXP, replenishing his wallet. This trip was worth it. Han Xiao rubbed his hands and opened the interface eagerly. The skills that were not maxed out, except for the blueprints, were grappling LV5, precision shooting LV3, special combat LV, stealth LV, aim while holding your breath LV, night attack LV1, precision enhancement LV4, energy electromagnetic enhancement LV1, precision repair LV1, and pickpocket LV. He did not even look at the EXP requirement and directly leveled up all his skills except the blueprints. Inhuman. Your precision shooting has reached LV5. Your sniping has reached LV5. You have learned field control vision. Your grappling has reached LV5. Your special combat has reached LV5. You have learned deadly critical strike. You have gained the talent combat expertise. You have gained the talent shooting expertise. Chapter 201. He had unlocked 2 new abilities and 3 new talents. Among them, Bat Habit was the talent for Night Stalker, after all the abilities were maxed out. Without hesitation, Han Xiao upgraded the new abilities to the highest level as well. Field Control Vision LV 10, plus 15% attack speed, plus 20% range, plus 22% vision. Duration, 13 seconds. Cooldown, 12 minutes. Cost, 300 stamina. Lethal Critical Hit LV 10. Critical hit damage increased from 200% to 250%. For critical hits will be dealt to a target within 2 seconds. There is a 0, 1%, 5% chance of causing a critical hit. Fighting Mastery, plus 5 STR, plus 3 END, plus 6% melee attack, plus 4% parry-marksmanship mastery, plus 6 DX, plus 8% firearm attack, plus 4% attack speed bat habit. Vision is not affected by darkness. Able to sense the surroundings through sound. Plus 5% DX when fighting at night. He had spent a total of more than 12 million experience to max out these abilities. Among them, Precision Enhancement and Precision Repair require the most experience. After all, they were the main class abilities of the second stage. The experience on the interface was still massive. With so many of his abilities maxed out, his strength had increased by another 20%. This was especially so for the enhancement and repair abilities, which are the main abilities of the mechanic class. The most noteworthy one was Energy Electromagnetic Enhancement LV1, which increased his machinery affinity by 33% after maxing out. Han Xiao could clearly feel that his understanding of machinery had deepened. The speed and quality of his machinery had both increased greatly. Coincidentally, his class advancement requirement was to create 5 pieces of purple equipment with an energy rank above 60. His ability to create machinery had increased, which would help him complete the class advancement mission. 5 pieces of extremely good quality purple equipment with an energy rank above 60. This was very difficult. The quality of the equipment in Galaxy was not difficult to understand at all. It was actually very similar to Sky Island and the Maiden. Low-quality epic equipment was not as good as high-quality purple equipment, and high-quality weapons were much more valuable. Han Zhao's abilities were maxed out, and he still had a huge amount of experience. As long as he chose a suitable blueprint and maxed it out, the quality of the finished product would increase significantly, and his success rate would be 7 to 8 times higher than before. Han Xiao thought for a while and decided to fuse the blueprints first to expand his options. With hundreds of millions of experience points, he could easily fuse the basic knowledge. However, he did not simply combine them. He only combined the machines that he felt were reliable. After all, there were too many possibilities of combining 15 pieces of knowledge. Every time he repeated them, it would double. If he did not control it, hundreds of millions of experience points would not be enough to fill this bottomless pit. After merging dozens of times and consuming millions of EXP, Han Shao obtained dozens of new blueprints. They were all in different branches and had different uses. After careful selection, he decided on 3 machines for his class change mission. Compounded magnetic chain, split blades, iron fist, mounted heavy mechanical arm, detachable, small mobile jet propulsion system. Not only did these 3 items fit the criteria, but they were also items that Han Shao felt he could use. Compounded magnetic chain split blades was a weapon that was similar to the magnetically controlled retractable armor. The main body was a circular metal plate with a magnetic core, and the other parts were a few separate magnetized blades. By injecting electromagnetic energy into the core, the magnetic chain would be activated, and the weapon would change from a scattered state to an activated state. The blades would float around the core, and they would attract each other if they were more than a certain distance away from each other. If they were too close, they would repel each other, which created the possibility of mid-range attacks. The operation of the compounded magnetic chain split blades was very complicated and unique. Energy was used to adjust the structure of the magnetic chain, changing the blades into different shapes. With different hand gestures, one could control the blades to perform all kinds of attacks and defenses. Just like the magnetically controlled retractable armor, it required practice. Normally, the blades would be separated and could be stored in different pockets. Once they were used, they would be glued together, making it easier to carry and hide. It was suitable to be equipped with Viper. This was also a super equipment that required energy, a mechanical pugilist equipment. Iron Fist, mounted heavy mechanical arm, detachable, was another type of mechanical arm. Different from the light mechanical arm, the heavy mechanical arm was huge, a few times larger than his arm. The power source was the internal motor and engine. Due to its huge size, it required a lot of strength. Han Shao had to equip Viper to reach the required strength requirement. Han Shao was interested in the detachable feature of this equipment. When necessary, he could use it to equip Viper to form a more powerful form. Small mobile jet propulsion system was a device that looked like a belt. It could eject gas to allow the user to jump in the air. The fuel was very expensive. The belt had a tight fitting mechanism, so it would not be like an air jet backpack where the user would still be in the same spot after the backpack was thrown out. The recoil would be a burden to the body, but Han Shao was immune to it with his endurance. The biggest use of this device for him was that it would make him more agile. He would be able to turn in the air and complete all kinds of maneuvers. It was very mobile. These 3 machines were the projects that he had chosen to make purple equipment. He felt that equipping the mechanical suit with melee weapons would complement the sniping style. The blueprints for the other turrets, mines, guns, and bombs were not suitable for purple equipment, so they did not increase much. Han Shao directly increased the level of these 3 blueprints to the maximum level. He spent more than 1 million experience points, which was nothing to him. The materials on the plane are not enough. Han Shao looked at his inventory. He did not replenish them in the Western continent. He thought for a while and decided to use the maximum level of precision enhancement modification to strengthen his existing equipment. While he was busy on the aircraft bed, the plane flew at a uniform speed toward its destination, the northern continent. 1 day later, the plane landed on the coastline of the northern continent. Han Shao walked out of the plane. The cold air surrounded him, and goosebumps appeared on his skin. The northern continent was cold, and a breath of air was cold to the lungs. Han Shao rubbed his hands and exhaled a mouthful of hot air. He opened the map and muttered, "There are also 4 novice villages in the northern continent. I have to speed up. The most advanced players are about to advance." Time was tight. After the pilot filled the tank, Han Shao urged them to set off. They soon arrived at the first novice village in the northern continent and were warmly welcomed. The players in the northern continent had been looking forward to his arrival. They saw the players in the western continent showing off on the forum every day. They were envious and looked forward to it. It was finally their turn to show off. Of course, the players in the southern continent felt even worse. Needless to say, Han Xiao stayed where he was. The players lined up to give him money and experience points. Their faces were full of joy, and the numbers on the interface kept rising. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd. Hao Tian stepped out, and the players around him spontaneously made a path for him. "I'm here to buy a letter of recommendation," Hao Tian said. Han Xiao looked up and had a thought. He recognized Hao Tian, a pro-god who was on par with Li Ge. Hao Tian paid the money and took the letter of recommendation. He was expressionless the whole time. He turned around and left after receiving the mission without hesitation. At this time, the whispers of the players around entered Han Zhao's ears. Didn't Hao Tian complete all the missions in the novice village? I remember he left the day before yesterday. No, I saw him come back with my own eyes. He stayed for 2 more days, probably to wait for Black Phantom's mission. It's a loss for a pro player to waste 2 days. To get Black Phantom's mission, if it were me, I would wait for 10 days. Han Zhao's eyes flashed as he thought to himself, Hao Tian seems like a good choice. Chapter 202. Including Hao Tian, Han Xiao had contacted a few professional players in the northern continent and sent them out for missions. He gave the pro player his phone number and email. After completing the mission, he had to send all the details over. Only then would the mission be considered complete. This way, he could pass his own mission judgment. If there was a mission item that he needed to give to Hannes, he would have to personally take a plane to get it. However, compared to doing it himself, it saved him a lot of time. He could command the strong players to help him complete the mission and reap the benefits. Among the professional players who came to accept the mission, there were many strong players from his previous life, and Hao Tian was one of the best. Although Han Xiao had high hopes for Hao Tian, since he said that he would only treat him differently after he completed the mission, he was not in a hurry. In the northern continent, Han Technician rushed to the novice village and spent most of his time on the road. During the journey, Han Xiao used the max-level precision enhancement modification to upgrade his equipment, and its attributes increased slightly. He also tried to create the 3 pieces of equipment that he had chosen, and the results were satisfactory. The first time he created it, the quality was blue. After more practice, there was a chance for him to reach purple equipment. The players at level 19 had already appeared, and with Han Zhao's current efficiency, he could complete all the novice villages in the northern continent before the first player advanced. As for the Andria continent, Han Xiao felt that it was too late, but he did not want to go to Andria anyway. That was the Germinal organization's base camp, a dangerous place. Furthermore, the players were forced to leave the novice village by the Germinal organization. To him, the risks were far greater than the benefits. At this time, in the Blue Star section of the forum, the Northern Continent players were the happiest, and the Andria players were the second most excited. In their opinion, after Black Phantom finished running through the Northern Continent, it would be their turn next. This is awkward. Han Xiao was helpless. The weather in the Northern Continent was cold, and the main terrain was snowy plains and icebergs. Thin snow floated in the air, and the towering mountains in the distance were shrouded in clouds. The boundary between the dark green mountains and the snow was clear. The third novice village was called Frostpine Village. It was located in a frozen forest valley. The vast expanse of white forest was filled with ferocious northern beasts. The plane landed outside the forest. Han Xiao trekked through the forest with his electromagnetic hover shoes and headed towards Frostpine Town, according to the radar. The distant roars of beasts could be heard from time to time, reminding Han Xiao that there were many beasts in the northern continent, and there was no lack of high-level beasts. I remember there's an ice field where the ice claw bears are high-level monsters. They're between level 53 and level 56, and they're not elites or bosses. I can get lethal shot there, Han Xiao thought to himself. That ice field was a bit far, so Han Xiao planned to go there after he finished running the novice village. While looking at the map, he noticed something else. The Overmara family's territory was not far from Frostpine Town. Not long after, Frostpine Town appeared in his line of sight. Han Shao composed himself, slowed down his pace, and walked over. In the forest 100 meters away from Frostpine Town, a dozen people were sitting in a circle. They were all wearing combat suits, guns, and daggers. They were organizing their equipment. They were a combat team from the Overmara. They were ordered to capture some Inhumans in Frostpine Town and bring them back for research. Captain Keaton had a ferocious look on his face. He held a handmade cigarette in his mouth and pulled the bolt of his gun. He said in a rough voice, "The battle plan is clear. Don't make any mistakes. Don't worry. It's just a group of Inhumans. If they dare to resist..." Keaton patted the grenades on his waist. "Don't be stingy with these little things. Blast them into charcoal." Everyone laughed. Also, these Inhumans look no different from normal people. Don't catch the wrong people. Keaton looked at his watch and asked everyone to stand up. "Organize your equipment. Follow my signal." At this time, a figure walked past on a small path outside the forest. One of the team members pointed and whispered, "Captain, there's a passerby there. Is he an Inhuman?" "I think so. There are many beasts in this forest. Only Inhumans would move alone. Catch this lone Inhuman, and we'll complete the mission." Everyone was eager to try, but after waiting for a few seconds, they realized that their captain didn't respond. They turned around and were shocked. The ferocious Keaton's face was now pale with fear. His lips were trembling unnaturally, and his cigarette fell to the ground. "What's wrong?" One of the team members didn't understand. Keaton's throat moved up and down. He hurriedly said, "Cancel the plan. Leave this place immediately." "Why?" Everyone was shocked. "That's not an Inhuman," Keaton said angrily. He's Black Phantom. He just had a conflict with the family not long ago." "Black Phantom?" Everyone was shocked. They looked at the road to confirm, but they realized that the road was empty. The figure had disappeared without them knowing. Then, they heard an unfamiliar voice coming from behind them. "I think I heard you call me." Everyone froze and turned around mechanically. A figure in black was standing behind Keaton, looking at them curiously. A chill ran down their spines. Keaton's hair stood on end. He didn't notice how Han Shao got behind him. The sound just now was like thunder to him. He was so scared that his heart twitched. It was so cold, but he was so nervous that he was sweating. Han Shao raised his eyebrows. He had felt the presence of people from afar. These armed men were so nervous in front of him. They probably knew who he was and didn't have good intentions. "Are you going to say it yourself, or do you want me to help you? You could try lying." Han Shao curled his finger. 7 scattered blades suddenly flew out from the pockets on his waist and legs. They floated in the air and aimed at the vital parts of Keaton's body. Compounded, split magnetic chain, split blade, blue quality, attack power 34 to 92, super equipment. The slashing power of the blades depends on the amount of energy used. It can be shaped into all kinds of weapon shapes, and its attack speed is very high. The equipment comes with the skill, revolving slash. All the blades cut like a clown throwing a ball. It can cause high speed and high damage. Before level 60, it can be considered a melee weapon. In the eyes of the players, this thing can be considered a godly weapon in the early game. Han Shao had spent millions of experience to get this blueprint. The cold light in front of Keaton made his scalp numb. He quickly told Han Shao the identity of the team and the mission, not daring to hide anything. They were from Overmara. Han Zhao's eyes flashed. He knew why these people were afraid of him. Last time in Green Valley Town, he helped Liu Cheng attack Overmara's territory and formed a grudge with Overmara. However, he saw rumors on the darknet that Overmara wanted to take revenge on Liu Cheng, but they didn't mention anything about him. I should be enemies with them. Are they afraid of me? Han Shao suddenly became interested. He put away the compounded split magnetic chain split blades and said, "Go back and tell your leader that I will visit him soon." Keaton's tense nerves relaxed. He didn't dare to turn around and look at Han Shao. He quickly ran away, and his team members quickly followed. After running for a few hundred meters, Keaton stopped. He turned around and confirmed that Black Phantom was not chasing him. He then let out a long sigh of relief. He was sweating like he was just fished out of water. His heart was still beating violently. "Captain, what do we do?" Everyone still had fear on their faces. "Let's go back and tell the leaders about this." Keaton gulped. "Black Phantom came to the North Continent and wants to visit us?" The leader of Overmera, Dalat, opened his eyes wide like an angry bear. He yelled, "We didn't even look for him, and he dares to come to us first. He doesn't respect us at all. I'm going to kill him." The three-headed leader, Sei Chi, was a Sharnik. He had dark brown skin and a muscular body. He said in a muffled voice, "Don't be impulsive. He's not someone to be trifled with. He dares to come to us alone, so he must be fearless." Dalat stared at him. "Xiao Jin, what do you think?" Xiao Jin adjusted his monocle and said calmly, "He only said that he wants to visit. If he wants to deal with us, he doesn't need to inform us. We can contact him first and see his attitude. Maybe Black Phantom doesn't plan to do anything." Chapter 203. Frostpine Town was a poor beginner settlement. Poor meant that there were many missions. Although the equipment of the players here was shabby, the experience points were quite high. Many players came to buy skills, and some even came to take pictures with them. Han Xiao was the center of attention. Wherever he went, there would be a crowd. After a day, Han Xiao left Frostpine Town, returned to the plane, and headed to the Overmera family. Of course, he did not have a sense of belonging to his original body's family, but he could not help but be curious about his original body, so he decided to ask around. Furthermore, Alamera was still hunting for his original identity, so Han Xiao was very interested in getting in touch with them. The Overmera family, a warlord tycoon in the northern continent, has a cooperative relationship with Theseus. They have 24 settlements in the world, 5 of which are large territories. They are very rich and registered as a legal financial group in Theseus. They are involved in business and politics, and each industry is managed by different factions. There are 4 main factions in the Overmera. Dalat Overmera's home faction, the second leader Xiao Jin Xiao faction, the third leader Sei Chi's Red Island faction, and the relatively loose local alliance Northern School. The Overmera is a warlord force formed by the forces of the fallen country. The home faction is in charge of the overall situation, and the other factions are under the banner. They swallowed many loose warlords and became one of the most powerful warlords in the northern continent. After that, they accepted Theseus' offer of amnesty and obtained an official background. In recent years, they have not made any big moves. They are basically helping Theseus solve some difficult problems, especially Raylan. The situation in the northern continent was different. It was not as peaceful as other countries. The conflict between Theseus and Raylan was very intense, and there were often bloody incidents. The soldiers, agents, and supers of the two countries fought in secret battlefields. The hatred was deeply rooted. Both Theseus and Raylan were very aggressive countries, and there was no room for 2 tigers on one mountain. In the 20 to 30 years since the beginning of the new era, the two countries were always trying to get rid of each other. Until recently, when they decided to join forces to attack the Germinal organization, the two sides finally stopped. Han Xiao muttered, "The Overmera's headquarters is a tiger's den. Although the Overmera are afraid of my identity and strength, it is because of their large business. Strictly speaking, I am now their enemy, and we might fight." A large settlement was located halfway up a snow-covered mountain range. This was the headquarters of the Overmera. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. There were only 2 ways to enter the settlement. The first was through the heavily guarded mountain road. The second was to climb up the cliff on the other side of the settlement. It was also guarded. The mountain rocks were dark green, the snow was white, and the cold wind was bone-chilling. At the mountain pass, a sentry in a thick coat looked around. Suddenly, he saw a figure slowly approaching in the snowstorm. "Someone is approaching." The sentry ordered his companions to be on guard. Soon, the full appearance of the figure appeared in their sight. The sentry's face froze. It was the Black Phantom that the leaders had ordered them to pay special attention to. Looking at the tall and heavily guarded mountain pass, Han Zhao's eyes flashed. It was indeed, as the intelligence said, very heavily guarded. He just did not know what the Overmara's attitude toward him was. He soon had an answer to his question. After waiting for a while, the mountain pass opened. A small team surrounded a man and walked in front of Han Shao. The man put on a fake smile and said, "Mr. Black Phantom, welcome to the Overmara. My name is Ummel, and I am here to welcome you. Please follow me up the mountain. The leaders have been waiting for a long time." Well, it looks like they will not start fighting immediately. Judging from the way they talk, it feels like they're going to have a banquet. Sigh, so troublesome. What can't they use the simplest and most violent means to solve it? This is not called violence. This is returning to the basics, skipping the process, and going straight to the last step to save everyone's energy. Time is money. Sigh. Since I'm already here, Han Technician lifted the single-shoulder backpack full of machines and followed Ummel up the mountain path. The mountain path was shrouded in clouds as they passed through one mountain pass after another. The two of them were accompanied by guards. Along the way, Han Zhao's face was always dark. Ummel wanted to test him many times, but he was forced to swallow his words by Han Zhao's expression. After thinking for a long time, he braced himself and said, "The leaders were very surprised to hear that you were coming to visit. After all, we had some unpleasantness not long ago. You're very curious about why I am here. Indeed, strictly speaking, we are not friends, but since you are here personally, I believe you are here with a friendly goal," Ummel said. "I am here to cause trouble. I haven't chosen who to kill yet. Why don't I start with you?" Han Shao said. With your strength, why do you need to visit if you want to assassinate our middle-level officers?" Ummel's expression did not change. "This joke is not funny, is it?" Han Shao glanced at the guards beside him. These soldiers were expressionless, and their fingers never left the trigger. They had a cold and masculine posture. However, the cold sweat flowing down from their temples and their short breaths revealed that they were not as calm as they appeared to be. The captain of the guards secretly glanced over, and Han Shao instantly caught it. The captain was so scared that he quickly looked away. But they seemed to find it interesting. Han Shao smiled and patted the captain's shoulder. He could clearly feel the captain's body tense up for a moment. Ummel smiled, but he cursed in his heart. He did not come with good intentions. He is fearless. I can't figure out his intentions. Han Shao narrowed his eyes and suddenly asked, "Ummel, that's your name, right? Which faction are you from? Home faction or something else?" Ummel's expression became unnatural. He coughed and said, "I am a member of the Overmara family. That's all." Han Shao smiled and did not say anything else. The two were silent until the territory gate appeared in front of them. Ummel was relieved and said, "We are here. The leaders are waiting for you in the hall." The gate opened, and hundreds of soldiers walked out. The advantage in numbers seemed to have given them confidence. They stared at Han Shao fiercely. Ummel led the way at the front. He walked very slowly on purpose and stayed in the middle of the armed forces for a long time. He wanted to intimidate Black Phantom. Han Xiaoxi knew this, but he did not care. This trick was useless against him. Suddenly, his eyes moved. He saw some floating IDs outside the crowd. There were players here. That's right. Overmara is not far from Frostpine Town. Some players who left the novice village have a chance to come here. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. Since Overmara already has players, why would they send people to catch humans? There were many possibilities, but Han Xiao did not think much about it. The purpose of this trip was Overmara. It did not matter if the players were here or not. Why are these soldiers gathering? Far away, a dozen players stared at the crowd and discussed softly. Their IDs all had Bamboo Rain. They were all members of Bamboo Rain, a small casual guild with only a few dozen members, and they were all young people. The guild leader, Bamboo Rain Fragrance, was a beautiful girl with long hair. She said in surprise, "They seem to be welcoming someone. Is this an emergency? Let's go and take a look. Maybe we can trigger a mission." Bamboo Rainfly was a little handsome. After he finished speaking, he asked for the opinions of the team members. Of course, no one objected. Only the Bamboo Rain Guild players were in this settlement. They had found this place by chance. The maps sold in the novice village did not indicate this place. The players' interface maps were all foggy. Only when they bought the map or went to the place personally would they be able to light up more places. As they approached the crowd, Bamboo Rain Xian exclaimed, "That's Black Phantom!" Everyone was shocked. They looked at each other and realized that it was Black Phantom. Why would Black Phantom come here? And the people here seemed to be hostile toward him. Bamboo Rain Fragrance frowned and said, "He was still in the novice villages a few days ago. There must be a reason why he suddenly came here." Bamboo Rain Xian's eyes lit up. "This is an emergency plot. Maybe there will be a hidden mission. I'm lucky. I haven't seen Black Phantom before. I don't need to go to the novice village to learn skills from him. I remember that some of the video hosts are collecting his material." Seeing Han Xiao walk into the hall, everyone stopped in their tracks. The hall was a high-level area that was not open to them. It required a high-faction relationship. Black Phantom could enter directly, so they were helpless. Chapter 204. The structure of the hall made Han Xiao think of words like Hall of Brotherhood and Emperor. The hall was spacious, and there were rows of chairs on both sides. At the end of the hall was a main seat with a white bear skin hanging on it, and there were guards standing by the wall. At this time, the hall was filled with Overmara's top management, and they all turned to look at Han Xiao. Dozens of eyes gathered together, and coldness and hostility flashed in their eyes. Han Xiao suddenly came, and in the eyes of many of the top management, he did not come with good intentions. Most of them did not want to meet the suspected legendary assassin in person. They had heard all kinds of stories about Han Xiao, and they knew that he was unpredictable. They did not know what he would do, but Xiao Jin said that since he was a killer, it was safer to meet him in the open. There were also guards in the hall, and the guards were ready to shoot at any time. Many superhuman guards were also hiding in the dark, providing some sense of security to the top management of Overmara. Black Phantom. Dilat snorted from the main seat and waved his hand. "Give him a seat." A guard moved a chair and put it in the middle of the hall, facing Overmara's people, as if it was a trial. Han Xiaoxi knew that this was Overmara's show of strength. He came to their territory alone, and Overmara did not want to lose. Han Xiao did not care. He put the huge shoulder bag beside his feet, sat down steadily, and said, "Aren't you going to introduce yourselves?" Dilat said lightly, "Don't pretend. You must have checked our information through the darknet." Han Xiao glanced at the Overmara's members in the hall and found something interesting. The positions of these top management were very clear. The home school sat around Dilat, while Xiao Jin, Sei Qi, and the northern school sat in their own area. This detail told him that Overmara's internal conflicts were not small. Also, there were a few strong auras hidden around. Han Xiao estimated that if the negotiations broke down, it would be the scene of 300 executioners. Of course, it was useless against him. Han Xiao's attention was mostly on Xiao Jin and his people, secretly sizing them up. These people were the family of the original owner of this body, and they almost killed the original owner of this body. Bang. Suddenly, Dilat fiercely slapped the armrest of his chair and shouted, "You attacked our territory in Green Valley Town and killed our people. How do you explain this?" The atmosphere suddenly became tense. The few powerful auras were ready to make a move, but the other factions were indifferent. Only the home faction was full of hostility. Han Xiao remembered that he had also killed one of Xiao Jin's adopted sons, but Xiao Jin was expressionless at this time, so he couldn't tell what he was thinking. So be it. If you don't like it, then do it. Han Xiao smiled faintly. Dilat couldn't believe that Han Xiao dared to be so arrogant in his territory. He was stunned for a second before his face turned furious, and he shouted, "You!" Before he could finish, Han Xiao suddenly said coldly, "You colluded with the Germinal organization. Not only me, but the 6 nations will not let you go." Everyone was stunned. Colluding with the Germinal organization. When did this happen? Dilat swallowed his anger and said, "What are you talking about? We have never colluded with the Germinal organization." Han Xiao said, "The Germinal organization put a bounty on Zero, and he was once a family member. How do you explain this?" Dilat finally understood why Black Phantom attacked them for no reason. It was because he mistakenly thought that they were related to the Germinal organization. At that time, the team that was searching for Xiao Han was passing by Green Valley Town and might have been discovered by Black Phantom. Delot had heard that Black Phantom and the Germinal organization were enemies, and he felt that he finally found the crux of the problem. He shook his head and said, "You are wrong. The zero with the bounty is the son of the second leader, Xiao Jin Xiao Han." Xiao Jin frowned and glanced at Delot with a meaningful look. Delot continued, "But Xiao Han is no longer related to the Overmera. Furthermore, the German organization put a bounty on Xiao Han, which means that we are enemies, so it is impossible for us to collude with the German organization." It seemed that the Overmera wanted to cut off all ties. Han Zhao's eyes flashed, and he slowly tried to sound him out. He pretended to be serious and said, "I believe that with the Germinal organization's intelligence network, they will definitely find out that Xiao Han is one of your people. You are the biggest clue. Would the Germinal organization not contact you?" Delot's face froze, but he forced himself to say, "They have not contacted us. You think I will believe that? Will the Six Nations intelligence agencies believe that?" Han Xiao said calmly, "There are many suspicious points. I can only think that you are helping the Germinal organization find their wanted criminal. It is even possible that the wanted criminal was purposely sent by you to do things for the Germinal organization." Delot frowned. "That is not the case at all. There is more to it. I would like to hear the so-called more to it." Han Xiao was fearless, and this attitude made Delot grit his teeth. For the sake of the big picture, he had to cut off all ties with the Germinal organization. Now that the war between the Six Nations and the Germinal organization was about to start, if there was a misunderstanding at this point, the Overmera would fall into a harsh winter. Although Han Xiao came alone, Delot did not dare to act rashly. With Black Phantom's strength and identity, his visit might have been ordered by the Darknet. If he killed him, he would become an enemy of the Darknet, and it would prove that he was colluding with the Germinal organization. Most importantly, Black Phantom was unfathomable, and the people at the headquarters did not have the confidence to kill him, so it was not worth the risk. Therefore, at this moment, Delot could only tolerate Han Zhao's arrogant attitude. He glared at Xiao Jin, thinking that everything was caused by Xiao Jin. He rolled his eyes and said loudly, "Okay, Chief Xiao, tell me the details." Xiao Jin glanced at Delot, turned his head, and said, "Xiao Hai, tell me." A handsome young man walked out from behind Xiao Jin, and his face was a little gloomy. Xiao Hai, Xiao Jin's most outstanding eldest son, was in charge of some of the Xiao faction's affairs. He was a person with real power, and Xiao Jin had groomed him as his successor. Xiao Hai said calmly, "More than a year ago, I was escorting a supply convoy and was attacked midway. Xiao Han went missing at that time, and his whereabouts were unknown. I have no idea what happened to him after that." At this time, a leader of the Northern School said, "Tell us more in detail. Our esteemed guest doesn't seem to believe it." Xiao Hai coldly snorted and said, "The attackers were targeting me. Xiao Han is my younger brother. I made him dress up as me and used him as bait to attract their attention. Only then was I able to successfully escape. After that, I brought new troops back to the battlefield to search, but I couldn't find his whereabouts." Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. "So you asked your younger brother to die for you. Was he willing? What do you think?" Xiao Hai was impatient. Everyone whispered and looked at Xiao Hai with all kinds of meanings. Delot said, "That's how it is. We can show more evidence. Whether you believe it or not, we have nothing to do with the Germinal organization." Han Xiao nodded. He had already gotten the information he wanted, the experience of the original owner and the attitude of the original owner's family. When the original owner was mentioned, the people of the Xiao faction were indifferent, as if he was a stranger. Especially Xiao Hai, who did not feel guilty about killing his younger brother, and Xiao Jin did not have any dissatisfaction. In conclusion, the original owner was an insignificant character that was not loved by anyone. Everyone treated him like air. "You sure are miserable," Han Xiao thought to himself. Chapter 205. Xiao Jin suddenly said, "My adopted son died in your hands." Han Xiaoxin was moved and said, "This is a private matter, Chief Xiao. Let's talk about it in private." "Sure." Xiao Jin nodded. Everyone's eyes flickered. Black Phantom's answer to the same thing was completely different. Dilot showed dissatisfaction, but did not say anything. Han Xiao turned to Dilot and said, "It's getting late. Do you mind if I stay for the night?" "Xiao Jin, you entertain him." Dismissed. Dilot suddenly stood up and walked away. Everyone walked past Han Xiao with different expressions. An Asian man walked over and smiled. "My name is Xiao Ming, Chief Zhao's adopted son. I'm in charge of your living arrangements. Please follow me." Han Xiao looked around. Hummel, who had brought him here, was nowhere to be found. He thought to himself, Overmera's internal conflicts are very serious. Thinking about it, the undercurrent in the hall was the best evidence. With a lot on his mind, Han Xiao walked out of the hall and suddenly saw a dozen players surrounding him. They were all from the Bamboo Rain Guild. With excited expressions, Bamboo Rain Xian turned on the recording function. "We want to learn skills," Bamboo Rain Xian said. Han Xiao naturally would not reject the opportunity to earn EXP. He opened the skill tab. Xiao Ming beside him asked in surprise, "You know them?" He shook his head. Black Phantom seems to be very popular among the Inhumans. The Overmera members passing by noticed this and were shocked. The Bamboo Rain Guild wanted to try to trigger a mission, but Han Xiao did not interact with them. He stopped for a few seconds and walked away. It's a sudden storyline, but there's no mission. Flying Bamboo Rain was confused. Bamboo Rain Xian said, "The material I recorded doesn't seem to have any explosive points." Xiao Ming arranged a room for him. Although Han Zhao's attitude during the day made many of the upper echelons angry, it also explained the origin of the hostility, so the atmosphere was not as tense as before. Nighttime. In the name of discussing compensation, Xiao Jin invited Han Xiao to his mansion as a guest. When he arrived, Han Xiao realized that Xiao Jin's children were all there, including Xiao Hai and some other siblings. However, Xiao Jin's adopted son was not there. In private, Xiao Jin was as expressionless and unpredictable as he was during the day. Han Xiao sized up Xiao Jin and his children. These people were also sizing him up. "What kind of compensation do you want?" Han Xiao retracted his gaze and smiled faintly. It's his bad luck that he died. Xiao Jin's expression was indifferent. To him, an adopted son was just an assistant and a tool. "Then why did you invite me?" Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. There's no harm in getting to know a famous assassin. Han Xiao could not understand Xiao Jin's intentions. Maybe it was just to get to know him, or maybe there was another purpose. However, he was interested in interacting more with the original owner's family to get some information. The few of them chatted casually, and the topics were all over the place. Xiao Hai and the other siblings chimed in from time to time, and the atmosphere was harmonious. Xiao Hai was the leader of the siblings. The other siblings' words were somewhat respectful, but Xiao Hai's attitude was indifferent, as if it was natural. Unknowingly, they had chatted for more than an hour. Han Xiao frowned slightly and suddenly said, "I'm very interested in Xiao Han. Why don't you tell me more about him?" The atmosphere suddenly became cold. Xiao Jin put down the cup and slowly said, "He's my son. He's always been very incompetent. I didn't expect him to become a wanted criminal of the Germinal organization." Xiao Hai snorted. "I thought he was dead for sure. A scourge lives for 1,000 years, only causing trouble for us." Han Xiao pointed at himself. "Are you saying that I'm trouble?" Xiao Hai sneered. "Are you not?" Xiao Jin coughed and ordered him to leave. "It's getting late." "It is quite late." Han Xiao stood up and left. Xiao Ming brought him back to the room. When he entered the door, he passed a document to him and said, "This is Xiao Han's information. Father told me to give it to you." Han Xiao nodded. As soon as he entered the room, he immediately checked the room thoroughly. Before he left, there were 3 surveillance cameras, and now there was one more. He shook his head and continued to use the program to crack it. After doing all this, he flipped through the file and had a deeper understanding of the original body. He was an insignificant character, and he had never heard of this NPC Xiao Han in his previous life. Sigh. Han Xiao shook his head. The purpose of contacting Overmera was to understand the original body, and his goal had been achieved. He did not care about Overmera's attitude and structure because it had nothing to do with him. As for the so-called hostility, it was just to show that he was tough. Originally, Overmera did not want to be enemies with Han Shao. Han Shao only killed people in their headquarters because he had nothing better to do. It was not good to have an enemy for no reason. It was not good to fight and kill every day. It was better to grow flowers and plants. I wonder how the people of Overmera will react when they know that I am Shao Han. He had a wicked thought. He put away the file, lay on the bed, and closed his eyes to rest. He planned to leave in the morning. Midnight, Dilat's mansion. It's all because of that bastard Shao Jin that Overmera was involved in this unfortunate matter. That bastard has no scruples about expanding his influence. He obviously wants to seize power. Northern School is my people. Sei Chi's Red Island faction has always been neutral. What does he have a fight with me? Dilat gritted his teeth. When the Alamera family was first established, they were very harmonious internally. But when their influence snowballed, conflicts started to appear. They were not worried about the scarcity, but the imbalance. The home faction was the one in charge, so they gained the most benefits and were at the center of the storm. Although all the factions seemed to be obedient on the surface, they all had ulterior motives and wanted to seize power. Fortunately, after so many years of cooperation, they did not dare to make too big of a move. It was unlikely that there would be bloodshed. Even if there was, it would be secretly planned. Shao Jin was the biggest threat. Dilat secretly sent people to attack Shao Jin in order to get rid of Shao Jin's successor. Unfortunately, they failed and only killed an insignificant Shao Han. However, more than a year later, Shao Han, who did not care about anyone at that time, actually became a wanted criminal of the germinal organization and brought a terrifying enemy, like Black Phantom, to the family. Now that Dilat thought about it, he regretted it. At this time, Dilat's son, Lagos, walked in and said, "Father, Black Phantom left Shao Jin's mansion and met for 1 hour and 37 minutes. Meeting Black Phantom in private without me, Shao Jin is getting bolder and bolder." Dilat was furious. What do we do? Do we just let Black Phantom leave? Don't mess with him, but he dares to be so arrogant in our territory. Lagos was indignant. I said, "Don't touch him." Dilat slammed the table and roared, "Get out." Lagos clenched his teeth, closed the door, and walked out. The moment he turned around, his face became gloomy. At dawn, a commotion woke up Han Shao, who was in a light sleep. He jumped up from his bed and looked out the window. He saw the Alamera members yelling and shouting as they ran in a certain direction. What happened? Han Shao was confused. Footsteps approached quickly, and dozens of soldiers surrounded the room with guns. The captain yelled, "Black Phantom, don't move." The soldiers' mission was to control him, and they looked nervous. They could fire at any time. Han Shao saw more people running in another direction. Looks like something happened, and it's not targeting me. Han Shao narrowed his eyes and observed. After a while, the captain seemed to have received an order and yelled, "Come with us." Han Shao also wanted to know what happened, so he followed the nervous soldiers to Dilat's mansion. At this time, the crowd was so crowded that not even a drop of water could pass through. The leaders of the various factions were all there, and they all looked at Han Shao with fear and anger. This made him confused. After walking into the mansion, Han Shao finally knew what had happened. In the office, Dilat was sitting on the chair with his head up. There was a deep bullet hole in his left eye, and there was a cavity at the back of his head. There was a pool of blood on the wooden floor, and the smell of blood was pungent. The corpse's hands were dangling, and his legs were supporting him under the table. The leader of Overmera was assassinated. Cause of death, gunshot wound. The bullet entered through the eye, went through the brain, and pierced through the back of the head. He died on the spot. From the caliber of the bullet, the murderer used a large caliber pistol. The leader did not show any signs of resistance, and the clues scattered at the scene did not show that the murderer was here. Han Shao suddenly understood why the others were looking at him that way. Daryl had died last night, and, as an uninvited killer, he was obviously the most suspicious. Furthermore, the weapon used by the murderer was also a large caliber pistol. His assassination method was very similar to that of a ghost like him. Everything was too coincidental. This was a premeditated framing. Chapter 206. Layers of soldiers surrounded them from both inside and outside. All the higher-ups had different expressions. The home faction was furious, and their killing intent was awe-inspiring. Xiao Jin and the others frowned, looking very confused. Sei Chi's Red Island faction and the North faction were shocked, not daring to believe it. Catch him. Lagos's face was twisted. Xiao Jin frowned and interrupted. There is something fishy about this. Black Phantom came to visit openly. There is no need for him to do something like this. What if he wants to mislead us? A leader of the northern school said. Then why did he visit us? It's better to assassinate us secretly. Xiao Jin said. Our defense is tight. He wants to enter our base smoothly. Someone said. He's the murderer. Why are you still finding excuses for him? Lagos was agitated. He pulled out his gun and pointed it at Han Xiao. Sei Chi quickly pulled him back. Calm down. Black Phantom has no motive to do this. Motive? Lagos looked ferocious. He stared at Xiao Jin and gritted his teeth. No motive? Xiao Jin frowned. You think too much. The people of Northern School and the home sect were in cahoots. They wanted to control Black Phantom, who was the biggest suspect, first and then investigate the clues. Sei Chi felt that Black Phantom was too dangerous. He suggested to question Han Xiao on the spot. Lagos immediately stopped him. He felt that Black Phantom's words could not be trusted. They could not agree. A large number of soldiers surrounded Han Xiao. Several powerful auras secretly locked onto him. When the Overmera leaders were arguing, their attention was always on Han Xiao. Once there was any movement, they would immediately take action. Han Xiao thought to himself, framing me will provoke a conflict between the Overmera and the Darknet. Only the third party can benefit from it. Is this the intention of the mastermind? If I start a massacre, I will fall into his trap. It's all to put me in this troublesome situation. Han Xiao could escape at any time. He did not care about angering the Overmera, but this was exactly what the mastermind wanted. Escaping was equivalent to admitting to being the scapegoat. Killing people would make enemies, and it was impossible for him to surrender. It seemed that the mastermind's plan was successful. I've only been here for a day, and he can already fake an assassination method similar to mine. There must be a superhuman who is good at assassination. My arrival gave them the opportunity. Unless the real culprit was found, no matter how many reasons there were to say that there was no need for him to do so, without solid evidence, he was still the most suspicious person. After all, it was hard to tell what was in a person's heart. If one did not know everything and completely understand the other party, logic could not be used as an absolute basis. Wait, evidence. Han Xiao had a flash of inspiration. Dalat had just been assassinated, and the Overmera people had not thoroughly investigated the scene. The killer might have left some clues at the scene. At this time, the discussion among the leaders came to a conclusion. Lagos said angrily, Black Phantom, surrender. Xiao Jin added, if you did not do it, we will investigate thoroughly. Han Xiao smiled. You know that's impossible. Why don't you surrender? Both parties could not trust each other, so it was impossible for them to take the risk and disarm. This was a difficult situation to solve. However, Han Xiao had an idea and said, there's no point in this stalemate. I can stay here temporarily. You can send people to monitor me 24 hours a day. I'll wait for you to investigate the truth. Han Xiao was curious about who framed him, and he felt that this was going to be fun. This is one way, Sei Chi said hurriedly. He did not want a conflict to break out. Before Lagos could say anything, someone in the crowd opened fire. Han Xiao reacted quickly, and the magnetically controlled retractable armor appeared on his body, and the bullet was deflected. However, this made the nervous soldiers lose control and open fire. Open fire. A conflict broke out. Someone shot me. Han Xiao's eyes darkened. The situation was chaotic, but he saw who it was, a normal soldier. Bullets came from all directions, and Han Xiao could only deal with them first. The strengthened, magnetically controlled retractable armor had excellent defense. Sparks flew everywhere, but no one could break through his defense. The energy in his body surged, and he infused it into a round piece of metal on his glove, activating the compounded magnetic chain split blades. 7 blades flew out of his pocket and swept out like a tornado. Silver light flashed everywhere, and many soldiers had their gun barrels cut off. They were so scared that they hurriedly stepped back and bumped into their comrades who were surrounding them. The enemy's firepower weakened, and just as Han Shao was about to rush toward the soldier who shot him, the superhuman guards hiding in the dark made their move. Boom! Suddenly, flames exploded in the crowd. It was not just one, but 4. 3 pugilists, and 1 esper who could turn into a flaming man, all pounced toward Han Shao. The fists wrapped in flames smashed down fiercely. Boom! The ground where Han Shao was originally standing on cracked rapidly, and the wall cracked at the same time. Han Shao dodged in time and jumped into the air. Suddenly, a heat wave hit him in the face. The flaming man stretched out his hands, and a long serpent-like pillar of fire lashed out. A person in the air should not be able to dodge, but that did not include him. Han Shao turned the switch of this small maneuvering propulsion device on his belt, and a few small boxes on the side of the belt made a turbine sound. A strong force came from the belt, and it was as if there was an invisible hand that pulled Han Shao to the side. The fire serpent brushed past his back and hit the wall, creating a charred hole. 46, 48, and 49, 3 pugilists, and 1 LV-45 Esper. All of them are Grade D supers. These should be the high-end combat power left behind by Overmera. In the past, he would have found it difficult to deal with them, but now that his skills were maxed out and his combat power was even higher, he did not feel much pressure even without the mechanical suit. Han Shao was more concerned about the soldier who shot him, but he realized that the previous round of fire had hit quite a few of his comrades, and the young soldier who shot him was killed. Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. He did not believe that this was an accident. The person who framed me seems to have deep connections in Overmera. Seeing that I backed down, he purposely attacked me in order to trigger a conflict. As this thought flashed through his mind, Han Shao obtained a new clue. He suppressed it in his heart and focused on dealing with the 4 supers and soldiers. With a twist of his hands, the sharp blades circled around him like a protective storm, slashing close to 10 times per second, instantly causing the 3 pugilists close to him to bleed. Wherever the blades passed, the soldiers' weapons would be dismembered. He had used this kind of weapon in his previous life, and he did not need to practice too much. He was an expert at using it. He purposely held back and did not kill anyone. The magnetically controlled retractable armor, electromagnetic hover boots, and other equipment that he carried around with him had all undergone precision enhancement modification, and their attributes were even higher. Han Zhao's own combat power had also reached the peak because of his skills being maxed out. Facing these 4 supers whose levels were lower than his, Han Shao did not even need Viper. With the compounded magnetic chain split blades as his main melee weapon, he could defeat them easily. Han Zhao's health had already reached 3,800, almost the same as pugilists of the same level. With the protection of a magnetically controlled retractable armor, he was very resilient. On the other side, the members of the Bamboo Rain Guild witnessed the whole process of Han Shao defeating a group of soldiers and 4 supers. Bamboo Rain Xian recorded it and was extremely excited. Only this kind of material is explosive. Bamboo Rain Xiao Fei was surprised. I thought Black Phantom was their VIP guest, but for what they said, it seems like Black Phantom killed their leader. I just checked, and the 4 NPCs that fought with him were all extremely lethal. The forum was right. Black Phantom is one of the strongest NPCs. Bamboo Rain Morning Wind rolled his eyes and said, "Of course, how can an NPC that can give out a main storyline mission not be strong?" So, Bamboo Rain Fragrance made a shushing gesture and stared at the scene. Watch the plot quietly. The destructive power of supers was far greater than normal people, and the whole mansion collapsed in the fierce battle. The higher-ups had already run out, shocked and angry. More supers were on their way, and they would definitely be able to kill Black Phantom, provided that the 4 guards could hold him back. The sharp blade cut through the flames, and the iron fist collided with the armor. Han Shao moved around nimbly like a ferret, and his mobility was terrifying. The four supers were exhausted and could barely hit him once. He showed a weakness and lured a pugilist into attacking. He counterattacked with the thermoelectric incisor gloves and knocked down one of them. Then, the sharp blade moved like a whirlpool and cut the Esper, who controlled fire. His magnetic armor had good heat insulation, so the damage from the flames was limited. The remaining two people were quickly at a disadvantage. Chi. The sharp blade cut through the flesh of the pugilist and shot out from his body, bringing with it blood. In the end, the pugilist twitched and could not move anymore. *T. Lagos was shocked. The speed at which Black Phantom dealt with the four guards was beyond his expectations. The backup had not arrived yet, and the ground was in a mess. No one could stop Black Phantom. If he were to go on a killing spree, the officers would suffer heavy losses, and their vitality would be greatly damaged. Swoosh! A sharp blade floated in front of Lagos, and he was so scared that he hurriedly stepped back. However, the blade followed him like a shadow until Lagos fell to the ground. His face was filled with shock, anger, and fear. At this time, Han Shao suddenly put away the blade, wiped the blood on his face, and said calmly, "I can kill you, but then I will fall into someone else's trap. Our agreement is still the same. I can stay and wait for you to find out the truth. If you insist on capturing me, I don't mind being your enemy." As he spoke, he hooked his finger, and the blade danced in the air. The threat was obvious. Chapter 207. Lagos gritted his teeth with resentment on his face. Without waiting for him to speak, Xiao Jin immediately said, "We accept your conditions. I personally believe that the assassination has nothing to do with you. This is a scheme to provoke conflict between the two parties." The upper echelons silently agreed. Black Phantom was stronger than the rumors said. He did not even use the sniper that made him famous, and he easily took down the experts from the headquarters. These people were not weak at all, but they were not on the same level as Black Phantom. At this time, the backup finally arrived. Xiao Jin immediately ordered the soldiers to put away their weapons and spread out their hands to show their sincerity. Han Shao saw this and put away his weapon as well. He walked toward his residence, and the crowd opened up a path. They were very nervous. Xiao Jin glanced at Lagos and ordered, "Clean up the scene." Lagos's eyes were about to spit fire. The upper echelons of the home sect reached out to help him, but he pushed them away. "He could have killed us, but he insisted that he was not the murderer. He should be reliable," Sei Chi said softly. "Naive," Lagos said coldly. "If he killed us, all the forces in Overmara would fight to the death with the Darknet. He is just pretending to be innocent." Back at his residence, a notification appeared on the interface. "You have triggered an emergency mission, Real Murderer. Mission introduction. You have been involved in a conspiracy and have become the scapegoat. You have become a pawn to be used. Mission requirements. Confirm the real murderer and complete the mission. There's only one chance. Reward. One random skill or talent." Han Zhao's eyes flashed. It's a puzzle-type mission with only one chance. There were many types of missions, and puzzle solving was the most common type. Some required the player to be a detective to collect clues, and some clues would be given automatically. However, they were all very vague, and the player had to choose in the end. After waiting for a long time, there were no new instructions. Han Shao guessed that this mission belonged to the latter type. Considering that Overmara was wary of him, he probably would not be able to get any clues. It's best to wait and see, Han Shao thought. At the same time, the Bamboo Rain Guild triggered a different mission. Overmara shocking change. The leader of the Overmara was murdered, and the Black Phantom who visited suddenly became the biggest suspect. However, he claimed that he was not the murderer and used force to suppress the voices of opposition. Although the Overmara seemed to be obedient on the surface, some factions still firmly believe that the Black Phantom is the murderer. What is the secret behind this? There are 5 factions to choose from: Black Phantom, Home Faction, Shao Faction, Red Island Faction, and Northern School. Once a faction is chosen, it cannot be changed. Reward. Depending on the final result of each side's contribution, a certain reward will be given. The basic reward is 50,000 experience. Flying Bamboo Rain exclaimed, "At least 50,000 experience." 50,000 EXP was a huge amount for them. Sure enough, wherever Black Phantom was, there would be benefits. "What faction have you chosen?" "Black Phantom." "Me too." Everyone agreed. They did not know anything about the Overmera, and Han Shao had just destroyed the armed forces of the Overmera, so they knew that following Han Shao was the most reliable choice. The players of the Bamboo Rain Guild found Han Shao and expressed their intention to help. Han Shao was a little surprised. He thought about it and guessed that these players had received different missions. Their identities were different, so the requirements for triggering the missions were different. Usually, when there was an incident, the missions would be triggered within the area. Then follow me first. In a corner, two people were having a conversation. He did not provoke a direct conflict. The nail that was planted died for nothing. According to the intel, the Black Phantom is a bloodthirsty person. He actually showed mercy this time. What a mistake. Luckily, all the clues have been destroyed. As long as the truth is not found, the Black Phantom will always be the biggest suspect. The next day, the main faction held a hasty funeral for Dilat. In the next few days, the atmosphere in the Overmera became more and more chaotic. Everyone seemed to be very busy. Their footsteps were hurried, and occasionally, they would look at each other, full of unknown meaning. Han Shao, on the other hand, became invisible. It was as if all the factions had forgotten that he was there. Other than monitoring him 24 hours a day, no one came to contact him. After sending the players of the Bamboo Rain Guild to investigate the situation, Han Shao stayed in the room. He was calm. He had expected this. He was an outsider and the biggest suspect. Overmera did not have the confidence to deal with him at the moment, so they could only treat him coldly. Even if Han Shao wanted to look for clues, none of the factions would reveal it. All they could do was wait. However, waiting was not meaningless. All the factions started their own investigations and calculations. Han Shao thought, Dilat's death was very strange. What was the use of framing him for killing Dilat? First, it was to provoke hatred between Overmera and the Darknet. Then, it was very likely that a third party would benefit. Second, there might be other motives for killing Dilat, and he might just be a good excuse. With his identity and strength, it was indeed very easy to shift the blame to someone else. If the real culprit was to hide himself, then the identity of the real culprit was very likely to be someone who would benefit from it. Thinking about it this way, it seemed that only the factions other than the main faction of Overmera were most likely. Han Shao still remembered that Overmera had a very serious internal conflict. Killing Dilat was very likely to be to seize power and transfer the suspicion to him. However, going back to the first possibility, the real culprit was still a third party. It also seemed to explain the second possibility, to provoke a conflict between the main faction and the other factions, causing internal strife in Overmera. Sigh, I don't want to think about it. Han Shao rubbed his eyebrows. Anyway, no matter who the real culprit was, he was in an invincible position. As long as he did not make a move, the real culprit would be the one who was anxious. This mission could not be long-term. The effects of Dilat's death would appear in a short period of time. At that time, someone would definitely give themselves away. In a mansion, the upper echelons of the main faction gathered together. The atmosphere was very serious. The first master is dead. Who's in charge now? A tall and sturdy man said. He was Dilat's younger brother, Todd. Me, Lagos said coldly. Todd put on a fake smile. Lagos, this is not appropriate. What do you mean? Lagos frowned. You should call me uncle. Todd emphasized. First master, my brother died an unnatural death. We are all family. According to seniority, I should be in charge temporarily. Father just died a few days ago. You want to seize power? Aren't you too impatient? Lagos said in a mocking tone. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Without father's suppression, Xiao Jin and Sei Qi have ulterior motives. The position of the first master is empty. I don't know what they will do in order to seize the power. Don't think that they felt sorry for father's death at the funeral. In fact, they were laughing in their hearts. Todd chuckled. Don't make it sound so bad. I'm just worried that you might make a mistake due to your lack of experience. Since you think you're up for it, then you can take charge. I won't fight with you. Tell me, what are you going to do next? Lagos snorted. He was too lazy to question Todd's tone. He said, the most urgent thing is to find out who killed father. Todd frowned. He felt that the most important thing was to suppress the ambitions of the other factions and regain control of Overmera. However, it was not appropriate to express such thoughts in front of the home faction. He could only follow the topic and ask, do you have any leads? Lagos's face was cold. Black Phantom is the most suspicious. Every word that comes out of his mouth cannot be trusted. I have already informed some people to contact the strongest killers and mercenaries. When they arrive, there is no need to pretend anymore. We will capture Black Phantom and interrogate him directly. This time, I spent a lot of money to invite a strong person who has been famous for a long time. Maybe it really wasn't Black Phantom who did it, someone said softly. Lagos stared at that person and said coldly, then it must be Xiao Jin. That bastard is very ambitious. He has been under father for so many years. He must not be satisfied. All right, I heard that Han Xiao stayed in Xiao Jin's mansion for an hour on the night of the crime. Maybe Xiao Jin used a lot of money to hire Black Phantom to assassinate father, and then they colluded to put on an act. Chapter 208. If Xiao Jin really works with Black Phantom, it will be bad. It means that he has a weapon of mass destruction, and he can even seize power by force, someone said. Todd shook his head. They wouldn't dare. If there is a sudden change in the headquarters, and the upper echelons of all the factions are massacred, the people outside will take revenge on the enemies until they are dead. Xiao Jin is not stupid, and Black Phantom is an outsider. According to the rules, outsiders are not allowed to interfere with our internal changes. Lagos sneered and said, stupid. How do you know Xiao Jin didn't find a better place to go? Does he not have other forces behind him? His heart may not be in Overmera anymore. Xiao Jin closed his eyes and asked, what's the home faction doing? Lagos is in charge of the overall situation. They are investigating Delot's death, but there is no progress. Oh, Delot's mansion was destroyed by Black Phantom during the battle, and the clues are lost. Xiao Jin paused. Who ordered to bring Black Phantom to the scene? The team leader who went to control Black Phantom was called Miri. He died in the battle, shot by a stray bullet. Stray bullet? Huh. Xiao Jin shook his head. What is Black Phantom doing? He didn't do anything. A wise choice. Xiao Jin nodded and said, before the truth of Delot's assassination is revealed, no faction is willing to contact him. Once they do, they will become the target of public criticism. Those Inhumans are working for him. I still don't understand why he can easily order them around, Xiao Hai said. Don't worry about him. He can't be the murderer. After a pause, Xiao Jin asked, what's the Red Island faction and Northern School doing? They are cooperating with the home faction to find clues. Xiao Jin rubbed his temples and sighed. Sigh, the dog that bites doesn't bark. Sei Chi sat in his office and pulled down all the curtains. He dialed the phone and lowered his voice. Major General, what should we do now? What do you think? Delot is dead, and the position of the head of the house is vacant. We must elect a successor. I will participate in the election. I hope you can support me. Yes, I will use my connections to help you get votes from the higher-ups. When you take control of Overmera, remember how you got there. Don't forget the promise you made with us. Definitely. After hanging up the phone, Sei Chi let out a sigh of relief and revealed a sinister smile. His Shanu's skin wrinkled together. Han Xiao was very patient. Every day, he would stay in his room. The members of the Bamboo Rain Guild would act as his eyes and ears, gathering information. Although it was not much, it would not make him blind. In return, Han Xiao wasn't stingy with giving quests to the players of the Bamboo Rain Guild. Then, he opened a skill shop to earn their experience. Going back and forth, he was definitely earning. As mentioned before, as long as Han Xiao's skill level was higher than the players, Repeatedly learning the same skill would increase the skills level. Han Technician's skills were all maxed out, so he naturally met the requirements. The players of the Bamboo Rain Guild kept on spending their experience on his skill store. One was willing to fight, while the other was willing to suffer. My basic combat skill is maxed out. Flying Bamboo, Rain cheered. The guild members beside him all came up to look at the attributes excitedly. Bamboo Rain Xian said, I'm only level 7. Bamboo Rain Fragrance chuckled. It's your fault for sleeping in every day and not coming online so often. This group of players didn't try to hide their conversation, and Han Xiao heard everything. He found something magical. When the players were talking about things that had nothing to do with the game, the system should have muted them, but he could hear them. Without a doubt, it was the interface's work again. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of steady footsteps approached. Bang, the door was pushed open. There were many soldiers standing outside. Lego stood in the crowd with his hands behind his back and said coldly, Black Phantom, I suspect that you are colluding with Xiao Jin to assassinate my father. Get up now and come with me. Where did you get your confidence from? Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. Lagos had kept a low profile for so many days. Now that he's suddenly attacked, he must have found someone to help him. As expected, Lagos sneered and took a step back. Two people walked out from the crowd, a man and a woman. I see. Han Xiao patted his pants, stood up, and said calmly, Looks like you spent quite a lot of money. The man and woman were a couple, Lun and Vanessa. They were legends in the mercenary world, similar to Han Zhao's position in the assassin world. Their strength was also at the peak of the 3rd level of Blue Star, and they had survived until version 2. Zero. Lagos asked people to contact the Strong One secretly. When they heard that he was going to deal with Black Phantom, many people refused. They didn't dare to be enemies with Han Xiao. Those who dared to come definitely had absolute confidence. He had done his research this time and knew that these two people were at the same level as Han Xiao. It was safest to deal with the two of them together. Black Phantom was definitely not their match. Lego sneered. When I catch you, I'll make you spit out everything you know. Han Xiao shook his head. Isn't it good to be alive? Humph, you're quite arrogant. Lun was a muscular black man. He bumped his fist and said with disdain, I heard that you're good at sniping, but I'm 3 meters away now. I won't even give you a chance to shoot. How many punches can you take? Put down your weapon obediently, or I'll paint the floor with your brain matter. In an empty space, a third person's voice suddenly sounded. Long time no see, Mr. Black. This voice was familiar. Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. Hidden Demon? You're here too. Hidden Demon didn't answer. The air was filled with murderous intent. So it wasn't 2 strong enemies, but 3. Han Xiao shook his head and smiled. No wonder Lagos looked so confident. To deal with him, he really put in a lot of effort. Feeling the hostility of the 3 strong people locking onto him, Han Xiao smiled. The change he was waiting for had finally arrived. This was the chance to show his absolute strength. The players of Bamboo Rain Guild didn't know what to do. This group of extremely dangerous NPCs, they couldn't mess with any of them. Whoosh! A cold wind brushed past. Han Xiao equipped the magnetically controlled retractable armor in time and was scratched by the Hidden Demon's nails. After not seeing each other for a few months, the Hidden Demon was 2 levels higher and stronger than before. At that time, Han Xiao couldn't do anything to the Hidden Demon. It ended in a draw. But now, in terms of improvement speed, the difference between the two was like heaven and earth. With a wave of his hand, the compounded magnetic chain split blades formed a whirlwind and cut through the air. A series of damage values popped up in the air. A wound opened in the air and blood dripped down. The next second, the wound shrank and disappeared. The Hidden Demon could tighten his skin to cover the wound. The Hidden Demon was shocked by the compounded magnetic chain, split blades, and hurriedly backed off. Before Han Xiao could chase after him, a suffocating pressure came at him. Vanessa pounced forward and smashed her fist down. Han Xiao raised his hands to block, but his hands were sore and painful. He was at a disadvantage in terms of strength. Vanessa and Lun were both close to LV-60 pugilists. Their strength, agility, and endurance were much higher than a mechanic like him. Suddenly, Lun followed up quickly. He clenched his fists together and turned them into a black meteor, heavily hitting the armor on Han Zhao's chest. He felt a pain in his chest, and a high damage value popped up on the interface. This was the advanced technique of the pugilist class. It ignored part of the physical armor and was called hitting a bull through a mountain by the players in his previous life. Pugilists who learned the advanced technique were very difficult to deal with, and it gave him a lot of pressure. Han Zhao's expression didn't change. He pulled back and held two guns in his hands. The large caliber bullets shot out. After his shooting skill was maxed out, the power of his guns had increased. Vanessa waved her hands and released a circular air shield, which bounced off the bullet and disappeared. Shockwave blast. Han Zhao frowned. Another advanced technique. The pugilist class always had a place, no matter the era. This technique was cool and well-rounded. At this time, the people from the Bamboo Rain Guild opened fire. Although they knew that they could not defeat the enemy, they knew that they had to help since they had chosen Black Phantom's side. Pay attention to your positions. Don't get too close. Xiaofei, Cuckoo, keep attacking. Xian, don't get too close. Bamboo Rain Fragrance ordered loudly. She had experience in leading a team in dungeons, so she arranged the troops according to the method of fighting bosses. Inhumans? Lun was irritated. He used his arm to block his eyes. The bullets were bounced away by the protective flames and could not penetrate his skin. Vanessa swung her leg and pulled out an air blade like a whip. All the players from the Bamboo Rain Guild were cut in half at the waist. They turned into white light and disappeared. The Bamboo Rain Guild was wiped out. The difference in strength was too big. Taking advantage of this short moment, Han Zhao picked up the equipment bag full of machines and rushed into the room. Just as Lun was about to follow, Vanessa pulled him back. Be careful, he's a mechanic. There may be traps. Lun nodded and punched the floor. Cracks spread rapidly from the center of the punch. The whole house was on the verge of collapsing. The whole house was destroyed, and the battlefield became an open space. No matter what kind of trap Black Phantom had set, it would be destroyed. Lagos quickly left with the soldiers. Boom! The house collapsed. Dust filled the air and blocked the vision. Lun narrowed his eyes. He vaguely saw a figure jump out of the ruins. He immediately rushed forward like a war horse. His fist was like a meteor hammer. The flames left a dazzling mark and went straight for the figure's head. Down! Lun yelled. However, the next moment, he heard the sound of energy buzzing and a cold mechanical voice. Strong mode. Chapter 209. The dust dissipated, revealing its true appearance. A heavy mechanical arm that was several times thicker than a human arm was grabbing Lun's fist tightly. The high-density platinum alloy was dark and cold, full of the luster of steel. Han Zhao, who was controlling this huge mechanical arm, had already put on the Viper Modified. The sleek, black mechanical suit was like a human body with bulging muscles. Everyone was stunned. What is this thing? Han Zhao's right hand that was not wearing the mechanical arm grabbed Lun's arm. Lun wanted to break free, but he found that Han Zhao's strength was now on par with his, and he could not break free for a while. The Viper Modified provided almost 80 strength and 50 dexterity. Han Zhao's strength, dexterity, and endurance were now not inferior to any pugilist below LV60. Lun was still measuring the difference between them like before, and he was caught off guard. The heavy mechanical arm on Han Zhao's left hand roared, and he smashed Lun's head into the ground. He continued to smash Lun's head into the ground, and the crater on the ground quickly grew larger. Iron Fist, mounted heavy mechanical arm, left, quality, blue good, basic attributes, attack 85 to 88, defense 26 to 30, power rank 77, durability 986/1050 requirements, 45 STR, 45 to 90 STR, minus 45% attack speed, minus 15% STR over 90 STR. Does not count the equipment's attribute bonus, additional effect, plus 28 STR length. 1. 24 meters, includes external armor, weight, 85. 5 pounds additional ability, bionic, human, can make movements like a human's arm through torque and transmission straps. Will not restrict the operator's arm movements, very flexible. Additional ability, impact resistance. External armor is made of platinum alloy, extra durability, not easy to wear out. Special feature, removable remark. Big fist will smash your head. Since he was acting alone, Han Xiao had all his trump cards in his equipment bag. He disassembled the heavy mechanical arm into its components, making it easy to carry around. Furthermore, the assembly was very simple and fast, so it could be quickly formed in the face of a battle. When Vanessa saw Lun being pressed to the ground, she was both shocked and furious. She quickly rushed forward. Han Xiao did not dodge and fought with Vanessa in close combat. His punches and kicks contained immense strength, causing the ground to crack inch by inch. Shockwave Blast was a mid-range attack. It did not have enough lethality and would not hurt the mech at all. Viper's modified power mode had the upper hand. The two of them were extremely agile, and their fight was like a flash of lightning. In the eyes of the bystanders, it was just two blurry figures entangling with each other. Only the continuous loud noises and the destruction of the environment by the aftermath of the battle could tell how dangerous the two of them were. The black fist hit Vanessa's face several times, and her nose started to bleed. At the same time, Lun finally pulled himself out of the ground. His head was bleeding, and he pounced forward with a roar. However, halfway through, Han Xiao suddenly swung his fist and swept Vanessa to the side. He then took out the folded ghost sniper rifle on his back and aimed it at Lun. The black muzzle gave off an even more dangerous aura than before. Lun's hair stood on end. Han Xiao pulled the trigger. Flaming Will. Fatal critical hit. Overload. This spear strike was the most lethal attack he had ever unleashed up to this point. It was not just the effect of his active skills. His passive skills made his shooting power, critical hit rate, and machinery affinity even stronger. Furthermore, his gun had undergone the best enhancement. Everything was one level higher than before. This was the power of maxed out skills. Bang! A huge cavity appeared in Lun's chest, and blood gushed out like a fountain. You have dealt 1942 damage to Lun, LV 58. Damage reduction has been calculated. It was extremely close to 2,000 damage. One had to know that Lun's HP was only around 4,000 to 5,000. One shot, and almost half of his HP was gone. Lun knelt on the ground, his whole body twitching. He raised his head and looked at Han Xiao, his eyes full of shock and disbelief. Under the cold mask, an emotionless mechanical voice sounded. "Didn't you say that you were going to paint the floor with my brain?" Han Xiao pressed Lun to the ground with his right hand and smashed his left mechanical arm into Lun's head. Lun was paralyzed by this shot and had no energy to protect his body. The steel kissed his skull again and again. His skin and flesh were torn apart, and his bones were crushed. Blood splattered everywhere and dyed the ground and mechanical arm red. You have killed Lun, LV 58. You have received 175,000 EXP. Lethal shot, talent, unlock progress 43/50 Lun. Vanessa screamed. Her voice was filled with sadness, hatred, and anger. Then she turned and ran. Black Phantom was unexpectedly strong. She did not want to die. Only by surviving could she have a chance to take revenge. That's why I said that it's not good to live. Han Xiao shook his head and unbuckled the heavy mechanical arm. The huge metal arm fell to the ground. Han Xiao gave a command, and the armor on the left and right sides suddenly slid open, revealing a row of densely packed small holes. Dozens of thin, arrow-shaped black shadows shot out and landed around Vanessa. They exploded one after another and made a high-frequency sound wave. These were all miniaturized versions of the explosive grenades. Han Xiao made them into smaller arrowheads. He then added a simple firing module to Viper, which allowed him to release this portable and practical control weapon. The boom grenade's attribute was endurance. Although Vanessa was a pugilist, dozens of boom grenades were too much for her to handle. She fell to the ground in pain. With a few leaps, Han Xiao activated the thermal incisor gauntlets and clawed at Vanessa's eye sockets. He then activated the sunworm flamethrower on his wrist. Vanessa was quickly turned into a piece of charcoal in the midst of screams and the burnt smell. Vanessa's struggle before she died was all blocked by Viper's modified armor. Han Xiao let go of his hand and let the body fall to the ground. He activated the various scanning modules of the mechanical suit. Through smell analysis, the image of the hidden demon was outlined on the scanning panel. He was now lying in the area where the boom grenades exploded, twitching in pain. The hidden demon was already scared out of his wits by Han Xiao. It had only been a few months since the last time they fought, and the hidden demon had already reached a level that shocked him. He regretted accepting this mission and quickly wanted to retreat. However, he was very unlucky. When he was secretly escaping, he was knocked over by the aftermath of the explosion. Saved me a lot of trouble. Han Xiao broke the hidden demon's arms and legs. He then took out a mini GPS device and violently stabbed it into the hidden demon's body. He then slapped him unconscious and nodded with satisfaction. This way, I won't get lost. The scene was a mess. A large number of Overmera spectators had gathered. They were all shocked by Han Xiao's cruel methods. The players who had been revived stood in the distance. Their throats were dry. "This is so strong," Zhu Yuxin exclaimed. She had just recorded all the battle videos. She had a feeling that this material would definitely be popular. Black Phantom had never shown his mechanical suit before. The strong performances that they had seen so far were actually just the tip of the iceberg. This was his true strength. No, maybe Black Phantom was hiding more things. The members of the Bamboo Rain Guild were excited. They felt that they had found information that no one else knew. Among all the players, only they had encountered this unexpected storyline. Zhu Yuxian recorded the whole process and was very excited. Lagos's face was full of fear. His teeth were chattering, and his legs were shaking uncontrollably. The three strong people that he had high hopes for had been killed so easily. According to Black Phantom's original strength, Lun and the other two would have been a piece of cake. Who would have known that he had such a terrifying trump card? How was this possible? Lun and the other two are all top supers. They are legends who have been famous for a long time. I've asked the professionals, how could Black Phantom kill them so easily? Lagos could not believe it. Without anyone to rely on, facing the murderous Black Phantom, Lagos's body went soft. Regret could not describe his feelings. Han Xiao walked to Lagos' side, patted Lagos' shoulder, and said softly, "I've already spared you once. You can't kill me." Lagos tried to act tough. "I'm a manager of the home sect. If you kill me, the home sect," before he could finish. The sharp blade slid across his neck. Blood splattered softly. There was no hesitation. Lagos' eyes widened. He held his neck and fell down. His temperature dropped along with the blood. His leaking windpipe made a sizzling sound. He looked up at Han Xiao in disbelief. Chapter 210. Looking at Lagos' body, the home faction was furious, but they did not have the guts to challenge the current Han Xiao. A living example was lying in front of them, and their faces were full of excitement. At this time, Todd stepped out from the crowd and said in a deep voice, "This was all Lagos' decision. He deserved it. I can make the decision, and the home faction will not hold a grudge because of this." The home faction was surprised. They did not expect Todd to step out at this time and even admit defeat. Han Xiao did not comment and asked, "You are?" "Todd, Dilat's brother, Lagos' uncle. I'm in charge of the home faction now." Todd forced himself to be calm. The home faction had a weird look in their eyes. They were amazed by Todd's ability to take advantage of the situation. Once Lagos died, he immediately took over as the leader. However, what Todd said was exactly what they were thinking, so no one said anything. They silently agreed with Todd's position. The powerful reinforcements they had invited were easily killed. Han Zhao's strength was overwhelming. Everyone knew that if they still wanted to cause a conflict now, they would be asking for death. The other factions had different expressions, but they all had the same thought. Black Phantom cannot be provoked. Give me another room. Han Shao took back all kinds of machines and glanced at the ruins. I'll arrange it for you, Xiao Ming said hurriedly after receiving Xiao Jin's signal. After Han Shao left, the higher-ups of the various factions looked at each other. Black Phantom has overwhelming strength and does not care about being our enemy, but he still insists that he is not the murderer. Maybe he really did not do the assassination, Sei-Chi said. But Lagos died in his hands. This is a new grudge, the leader of the Northern School said. Todd interrupted him and said, Lagos brought this upon himself. We, the home sect, will not hold a grudge against him for revenge. Everyone looked at him with disdain, selectively forgetting that they also thought the same. Then what about Black Phantom? Someone asked. Leaving an invincible monster in the headquarters was like having a fishbone stuck in his throat. He felt very insecure. Xiao Jin said indifferently. He just wants to wash away the suspicion. When the truth is out, he will naturally leave, so don't provoke him. Arriving at the new house, Han Shao woke up the captive hidden demon. He had implanted a tracking device in the hidden demon's body. Even though it was invisible to the naked eye, he could still determine its location. What are you trying to do? The hidden demon was terrified. Han Shao took off his viper and put the equipment into his bag. He said with interest, I heard that your invisibility ability came from an accident during an experiment. Your skin has mutated. If I peel off your skin, it'll definitely be worth a lot of money. The hidden demon broke out in cold sweat. Don't do anything rash. You're now my captive. Do you think you have the right to negotiate? The hidden demon was speechless. Han Shao stopped teasing him and knocked him out, injected him with a strong hypnotic agent, tied him up, and threw him aside. Han Shao did not kill the hidden demon at the moment because the Darknet had a bounty for the hidden demon. If he was alive, he could be exchanged for some of money. He was prepared to accept the mission and hand over the hidden demon. Completing the mission immediately would maximize the benefits. In this conflict, Han Shao had displayed overwhelming strength. The Overmera did not dare to offend him at all. Under the premise of absolute strength, his decision to stay reduced the suspicion of many factions. Moreover, Han Shao was currently in an unsolvable situation. Now, it was the Overmera that did not want to have conflict with him. This time, the Overmera wanted to provoke a conflict between him and the Overmera, but it had almost failed. At the very least, the Overmera did not dare to face him directly. However, this was not enough. The instigator was still not found. Han Shao felt that there were two possibilities. The first was that the instigator gave up on their plan and continued to hide. The second was that they wanted to find a way to salvage the situation or even attack him. However, the possibility of the latter was not high. He had already proven that he was not someone to be trifled with. After Lagos died, the home faction became very low-key. Todd did not hold any grudges. He was more concerned with the benefits in front of him. Other than organizing people to investigate Delot's assassination, he was also secretly contacting various factions to gain support for the successor selection. With Delo's death, his son, Lagos, was the most likely successor, but he was killed by Han Shao. Now, the successor's position was completely up in the air. All the factions had ulterior motives and were eyeing the power of the head of the family. It was a sign of a storm. On the surface, everyone was concerned about the truth of Delot's death, but in fact, they were secretly more concerned about the successor selection. Of course, before the assassin was found, the selection would not start. Han Shao was the main person involved in this incident, but he was also an outsider. He did not care about this. These days, he was cooped up in his room and gathered information through the Darknet Intelligence Network and the Bamboo Rain Guild. He was searching for information about the Overmera. After 2 days, Xiao Jin came to his door and said that he had found an important clue. After checking the guards and surveillance cameras that night and comparing the testimonies and videos, I found some clues. That night, an assistant of a senior member of the Northern School went out and disappeared for 27 minutes. This senior member of the Northern School is called Su Dinghua. He is 45 years old and is a local of the northern continent. He has always been very low-key. In fact, I have been paying attention to him for a long time. When I planted a spy in the northern school, I found out that Su Dinghua was secretly in cahoots with Raylan. His assistant was also changed a few years ago, which happened to be the same year that Su Dinghua and Raylan started contact. There were many senior members who secretly contacted other factions, but they all had their own plans. However, Su Dinghua was obviously instigated by Raylan. Xiao Jin brought a lot of evidence. Han Xiao looked through it, and the evidence did indeed point to Su Dinghua. Han Xiao thought about it carefully. Overmera was a partner of Theseus. Weakening Overmera was equivalent to weakening Theseus. This would make Overmera a strong enemy and cause internal strife. As a third party, Raylan could benefit from this, so they did have a motive to do this. The Northern School was the most inconspicuous, but if there was a conspiracy, they were undoubtedly the most secretive party. Didn't the other factions find this information? Han Xiao waved the document in his hand. I'm not sure. Xiao Jin shook his head. I got the information about Su Dinghua secretly colluding with Raylan by coincidence. The other factions might not know. Then why are you looking for me? Han Xiao asked. Raylan might have planted many experts around Su Dinghua to protect him. I hope you can help us capture Su Dinghua and his henchmen. This is also a good opportunity to clear the suspicion. I think you'll want to do it yourself. Xiao Jin said sincerely. If you want a reward, that's not a problem. Han Xiao stared at Xiao Jin for a long time. Suddenly, he smiled. Pay according to the market price. I'll help you this time. Okay. Xiao Jin nodded. At night, Han Xiao began to move. Since he had revealed Viper, he also wore it this time. However, he did not equip the heavy mechanical arm. Infiltration did not require such a hard weapon. Su Dinghua's mansion was relatively remote. Han Xiao took out his computer to hack into the area's network and froze the cameras. He then avoided the guards and climbed over the wall to enter the mansion. Su Dinghua's mansion was located at the edge of the upper echelon. The defense of the mansion was weak. With Han Xiao's current level and strength, infiltration was not difficult at all. He quietly went to the study. The lights were on. Han Xiao leaned against the wall and scanned his vision with his electromagnetic field. He found that there was no one in the study. Han Xiao quietly walked in. He looked around. The building was made of ordinary bricks and wood. There was no special metal that could block detection. The layout of the room was clear. There's a hidden safe behind the painting beside the desk. Han Xiao's eyes flashed. Just as he was about to open the safe, he suddenly stopped. After carefully looking around, Han Xiao did not care about the safe. Instead, he went to the desk and tried to open the drawers. They were all locked. However, this was not a problem for him. As a mechanic who could build guns and robots, it would be too embarrassing if he could not even open a lock. Moreover, Han Xiao was very experienced in picking locks. The drawers were filled with paper documents. They were all internal information of Overmera. There were also many reports. After flipping through them for a while, most of them were unimportant documents. However, he found a note with a string of numbers that seemed to be the safe's password. There was also a small metal key that seemed to be used to open the safe. It's too obvious. Han Xiao shook his head and closed the drawer. He did not take the key to open the safe. A safe hidden behind a painting. This method was too common. The key and password were deliberately left behind. It was like a deliberate bait. There was a high chance that the safe was a bait or a trap that would trigger the alarm. After all, the password of the safe was usually remembered by the person. Of course, there was also the possibility that he guessed wrong. However, Han Xiao was only there to capture someone. Once he captured someone, he would open the safe. When he came to the living room, Han Xiao heard voices. A few guards were chatting. Tactical Scan and Life Strength Database found that the strength of this group of enemies was around LV-20. They were not normal guards and could be supers. If they were normal people, it meant that they were very elite and had a very high level of subclass. Looks like it's right. Han Xiao nodded. Su Dinghua's guards were hiding their strength. There was definitely something wrong. He went upstairs and came to the bedroom. Su Dinghua was resting. Han Xiao directly rushed in and knocked out Su Dinghua before he could even scream. He then tied him up with a blanket. There were 8 guards in the mansion, as well as Su Dinghua's assistant. Han Xiao did not plan to let anyone go. Back in the living room, Han Xiao did not hide anymore and directly broke in. "Who is it?" The guards hurriedly pulled out their guns. However, with the powerful mechanical suit, these 4 guards were knocked over in just 2 to 3 seconds. The commotion attracted attention. The radar detected that other guards were quickly approaching. Han Xiao directly broke through the wall and, with a loud boom, knocked over the guards one by one. Su Dinghua's assistant hid the best. He was around LV-40, but he still could not hold on for more than 10 seconds before Han Xiao broke his arms and legs and knocked him unconscious. The difference in strength was too big, but it was not difficult for Han Xiao. Han Xiao's destructive power was like demolition. The entire mansion was a mess, and the rumbling sound could be heard. Outside the mansion, Xiao Jin was already on standby. Seeing that Han Xiao had succeeded, he immediately rushed in with his men. He saw that Su Dinghua and his guards were thrown in the yard, and no one had escaped. Han Xiao stood at the side and did not plan to leave. Xiao Jin did not avoid Han Xiao and directly interrogated Su Dinghua and the others in the yard, waking them up with water. Su Dinghua saw this and knew that they had been exposed. "How did you find out?" Su Dinghua was shocked and disappointed. Chapter 211. You bribed Miri to bring Black Phantom to the scene as soon as the assassination was discovered. You wanted to cause a conflict so that the chaotic battle would bury more clues. You even arranged for people to kill Miri in the chaos to silence her. Xiao Jin listed a lot of clues. Su Dinghua closed his eyes in pain and murmured to himself, "I knew this day would come. If I am exposed, I will die." Then Su Dinghua looked at his assistant and said, "I was the one who assassinated the leader, but I was not the mastermind." He was the mastermind. Raylan gave me a lot of benefits and promised me more, so I worked for them. He was the spy sent by Raylan to monitor me and control my actions. This plan was also proposed by him. The assistant stared at him angrily. "You're crazy. Do you think you can still live?" Su Dinghua interrupted him and said, "I work for you for the benefits. I don't need the benefits you gave me anymore. Now that I'm exposed, Raylan won't have an easy time either." The assistant's eyes suddenly turned white, his lips turned purple, and he started foaming at the mouth. He twitched and died. When Su Dinghua spoke, he knew he was going to die. He bit the poison in his tooth and killed himself. The other guards followed suit. Raylan people were famous for their cold-bloodedness and loyalty. No one was surprised by this. Han Xiao crossed his arms and watched. He had no intention of stopping them. Soon, only Su Dinghua was left alive. Xiao Hai sneered. "It's too late to fix it now." "It's not fixing it. I knew I was going to die." Su Dinghua shook his head. Xiao Jin interrupted. "Su Dinghua, you're also an old man in Overmera. The leader treated you well. How could you kill him?" "Ha!" Su Dinghua suddenly laughed out loud. He laughed so hard that tears came out. He jokingly said, "Second Master Xiao, this is not something you should say. Your blood is much colder than mine." Xiao Jin was expressionless and unmoved, but Xiao Hai slapped Su Dinghua's face and shouted, "Looks like you want to die a slower death." The people from the other factions had already heard the news and rushed over. They watched this scene in bewilderment. Su Dinghua laughed for a while, then suddenly said sadly, "I will personally apologize to the First Master." Xiao Hai took out a full set of interrogation tools and coldly said, "Then you have plenty of time to choose your words." Enough. He has admitted that he did it. Take him back and interrogate him. One of the leaders of the Northern School couldn't help but speak. Su Dinghua was one of the higher-ups of the Northern School. It was very embarrassing for the Northern School to be tortured in public. Su Dinghua was a spy. It didn't represent the standpoint of the Northern School, but it still brought shame to the Northern School. Xiao Jin looked at Han Xiao with a questioning look. Everyone's gaze followed. Black Phantom was the target of the framing, so his opinion was very important. Since the real culprit has been caught, the rest has nothing to do with me. Han Xiao said and turned to leave. The real culprit of Dilat's assassination was found. The whole thing was Raylan's plan, and Han Zhao's suspicion was cleared. Su Dinghua died during the interrogation. Before he died, he revealed a lot of information. He was a very important chess piece of Raylan, and the assassination was to provoke a conflict between Overmera and the Darknet. However, the plan went wrong. Han Zhao's strength was beyond imagination. They originally thought that they could catch or kill Black Phantom, which would make it difficult for Overmera and the Darknet to reconcile. However, they didn't expect Han Xiao to turn the tables and take the initiative. The assassination went so smoothly because of the internal forces that Su Dinghua had set up over the years. Raylan suffered a great loss when he died. As the person who caught the real culprit, Xiao Jin's reputation soared. The home faction could only thank him. The matter came to an end, but Black Phantom, who was no longer involved, refused to leave. No one knew what his purpose was, but the factions didn't have time to care about him. They were all busy with the successor selection. In the room, Han Xiao looked at the mission real culprit on the interface. Su Dinghua was caught, but he didn't choose to complete the mission. This matter isn't over yet. A cold light flashed in Han Zhao's eyes, and a thought became clearer in his mind. On the third day after Su Dinghua was caught, Xiao Jin brought Xiao Hai to visit. "Why are you looking for me? I should say, why are you staying?" Xiao Jin asked. Han Xiao said calmly, "I was framed for no reason, and your people wanted to kill me. I need compensation." Xiao Hai was furious. The whole thing was planned by Raylan. You killed our people, and you still have the face to ask for compensation? Raylan is too far away, so I came to ask for money first. This is robbery. Xiao Hai was furious. That's right. Han Xiao nodded calmly, with a teasing look in his eyes. What can you do? Xiao Jin pulled the furious Xiao Hai and wrote a number on a piece of paper. I'll compensate you personally. Is this enough? Han Xiao glanced at it. Barely. Xiao Hai's face was sullen. He didn't understand why Xiao Jin was willing to pay. He didn't think it was necessary. You came to find me for something else, right? Han Xiao crossed his legs. Yes, I do. I have a request. Dilat is dead, so the position of the head of the family is empty. Overmera is a big family, so it can't be without a leader. In 2 days, there will be an internal successor election. The election will be held by the higher-ups. Todd from the home faction, Sei Chi from the Red Island faction, and Angleton from the Northern School are all strong competitors. When I was investigating the cause of Dilat's death, they were secretly gathering the higher-ups to prepare for the election. They are at a disadvantage to me, so I hope you can help me. Xiao Jin said seriously. Why should I help you? Please help me this time, seeing that I've cleared your name. Han Xiao said faintly. You need to pay me if you ask me to help. Ungrateful. If it wasn't for father, you would still be the biggest suspect. Don't push your luck. Xiao Hai couldn't help but say angrily. Han Xiao glanced at him and said calmly, You should be thanking me for not killing you. Otherwise, you would already be corpses. Xiao Hai's face was twisted with anger. He was trembling from Han Zhao's attitude. He could only look at Xiao Jin and hope that his father would do justice. However, he was destined to be disappointed. Xiao Jin was very calm from the beginning to the end. How much do you want as a reward? Han Xiao touched his chin and pointed at the piece of paper. Triple this amount. Crazy. Xiao Hai was stunned. This request was simply too much. However, Xiao Jin didn't hesitate and compromised. No problem. Father. Xiao Hai was stunned. He didn't understand why Xiao Jin was so obedient to Han Xiao. He said hurriedly, It's useless to ask him for help. Outsiders can't interfere with internal elections. No matter how strong he is, he has no right to speak in internal meetings. Xiao Jin said faintly, I have a way. Mr. Black Phantom, are you willing to join the Xiao faction? Join the Xiao faction? What did that mean? Han Xiao raised his eyebrows and said with interest, What do you mean? Join my family and become my relative. You'll be on the same level as me. My child will be your adopted child. The atmosphere suddenly became weird. Xiao Hai almost fell. He was confused. Xiao Jin didn't discuss this with him before. How did he get a godfather out of nowhere? F*CK, you can do that? Han Zhao's eyes twitched. Xiao Jin's shamelessness was out of his expectations. He couldn't help but ask, "Will such a childish method work?" Xiao Jin said faintly, "Politics has always been childish. As long as you join the Xiao faction, you will be able to participate in internal meetings. Your strength is your right to speak. As long as you appear, it will be a threat. At that time, your identity will be a member of the Xiao faction, so it won't be considered a threat. The other factions will give up automatically." Showing off power to his own people and showing off power to an outsider was different. One was a threat from an outsider, which would only cause disgust. However, if he became one of his own people, it would mean that Xiao Jin's power would increase greatly. Furthermore, in the overall situation, he would be able to gather a powerful fighting force for Alamera, which was a huge contribution. Plus, with the power that Xiao Jin had accumulated over the years and the fame that he had gained from solving Daryl's assassination, the other factions would wisely give up. Until now, Han Xiao had a basic guess about the whole thing. He smiled and said, "Joining the Xiao faction has no benefits for me. Why should I agree? You join the Xiao faction, and when I become the leader, the power of Overmera will help you," Xiao Jin said. "It seems that for the position of leader, you are willing to pay any price." Han Xiao smiled and said in a mocking tone, "Okay, I will join the Xiao faction and reluctantly become the godfather of your child." Xiao Hai almost went crazy with anger. To recognize someone as his father, he had to give them benefits first. Only then would he be qualified to be someone else's godson. He had never been so sullen before. What was even more infuriating was that Xiao Jin actually agreed. He almost suspected that his father had been brainwashed. Han Xiao looked at Xiao Hai and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Come, let me hear you call me godfather." Xiao Hai's face turned green. He was a conceited person. Doing this would be worse than killing him. But when he saw Xiao Jin's stern eyes, he held back the anger in his heart and said through gritted teeth, "Godfather." Han Xiao picked his ears and pretended to say, "I didn't hear you clearly." "Godfather." Xiao Hai's cheeks puffed up. He used so much force that blood seeped out of his gums. His mouth was filled with a metallic taste. "That good boy." Han Xiaoxin did not know whether to laugh or cry. His original body was Xiao Hai's younger brother. When Xiao Hai knew the truth, he did not know what he would think. Xiao Jin's shamelessness also made him gasp in amazement. Xiao Jin reached out his hand. Then, to a happy cooperation, they shook hands. The father and son of the Xiao family stood up and left. They were silent all the way. Back at the Xiao faction mansion, Xiao Hai could not help but ask, "Father, why did you do this?" Xiao Jin was expressionless. "Black Phantom is greedier than I thought. I thought that by helping him clear his suspicion, he would be grateful, but I did not expect to have to pay such a high price to ask him to help. But it was worth it. At least we're the only ones who can negotiate with Black Phantom. The other factions will not be able to ask Black Phantom to help them. When I become the leader, these losses will be easily earned back." "I see. As long as you become the leader, you will not have to care about Black Phantom." Xiao Hai understood. Xiao Jin suddenly turned to look at his son and said sternly, "You are wrong. After becoming the leader, you will have to fulfill the terms with Black Phantom and provide him with help. Burning the bridge after crossing the river is asking for death. This world follows the law of the jungle. Black Phantom's strength is already at the top. The deterrence of an individual's strength is as scary as the power of an organization. As long as Black Phantom is in the Xiao faction in name, he can be our backer, and the other factions will not dare to make a move. I know you are not comfortable, but don't let your emotions affect your decisions and ruin my plan." Xiao Hai was unwilling, but he could only grit his teeth and agree. Chapter 212. In the past 2 days, Xiao Jin had shown Han Xiao information about the activities of the other factions. He had also transferred the promised compensation and remuneration to his Darknet account, a total of 8 million aquamarine dollars. Han Zhao's current assets were very large, more than 40 million, which had increased by more than 10 times. He had plenty of money and could spend lavishly on machinery. He could start implementing some ideas, such as the robot army style that he had not dared to build because he thought it was too expensive. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. The internal meeting was held as scheduled in the Overmara meeting hall. The upper echelons of the various factions gathered in the hall, and security was tight. Han Shao wore a hood and pretended to be an ordinary upper echelon of the Shao faction when he entered the meeting hall. He did not attract any attention and found a seat. There was a large round table in the middle of the meeting hall. The leaders sat by the round table, while the other upper echelons sat in a circle around it. Those who belonged to different factions sat behind the leader. The factions were clearly divided into small areas from different angles. It was snowing outside, but there was heating in the meeting hall. Everyone took off their coats and whispered to each other. It was very noisy. Dong dong. Todd rang the bell on the table, and the meeting hall quickly quieted down. Then, let the meeting begin. Todd's face was serious. There are 4 candidates for the successor of the first master. Me, second master Shao, third master Sei Chi, and Mr. Angleton. When you are ready, you can vote. Then, before the vote, I would like to say something. Angleton stood up and spoke. It was a routine to make a declaration before the vote. Although most of the upper echelons had their own candidates, this procedure was still necessary. Soon, all 4 of them finished speaking. Todd looked around and said, "Then let the voting begin." The upper echelons announced their choices. Todd was nervous. He had been busy contacting the other upper echelons and promised them many benefits. During the meeting, it was basically decided that he would be chosen. According to the number of votes, he could beat the other candidates. However, he was soon stunned. Those upper echelons who had sworn to vote for him all voted for Sei Chi. They did not even look at him. How can this be? Todd was shocked and angry. Sei Chi's face was flushed with success. He frequently smiled and greeted the higher-ups who voted for him. Seeing that he had an absolute advantage in votes, he immediately felt relieved. When Dilat was assassinated, Sei Chi realized that the successor election was an opportunity. He secretly contacted Theseus, and Theseus agreed to help him get the position. For this, Sei Chi promised to give Theseus many benefits after he became the head of the family. Although Overmara was Theseus' partner, Theseus was very aggressive. He secretly wanted to take control of Overmara's forces, so he hooked up with Sei Chi, who was unwilling to submit to others. This time, Theseus used his connections and secretly roped in a large number of high-ranking officials to create an advantage for Sei Chi. As for Angleton from Northern School, he was basically just a bystander. Even the people from Northern School did not vote for him. He sat awkwardly in his seat, not knowing whether to sit or stand. Angleton was jointly elected by the Northern School to support the situation. He was not willing to give up the position of the head of the family, but he knew that he did not have a chance. He was very conflicted. Sei Chi's votes were in the lead, and, as expected, his votes exceeded the majority. The dust settled. Haha, thank you all for your support. I will not disappoint you all. Sei Chi stood up. His face was glowing, and he could not hide his pride. At this time, Xiao Jin spoke. Wait. Everyone immediately looked over with different expressions. Xiao Jin was also a strong candidate, but he did not intervene until now. Everyone was curious about what his backup plan was. Second Master Xiao, do you have any objections? Sei Chi's heart sank. He emphasized the words Second Master. Suddenly, an unforgettable voice came from the group of Xiao faction members. I have objections. Everyone's eyes widened, and their faces became fearful. They could tell that this voice belonged to Black Phantom. The Xiao faction people separated, revealing Han Shao, who was hiding inside. At this time, Han Shao was still dressed in a black trench coat and black gloves. He crossed his arms and said expressionlessly, I think Xiao Jin is more suitable for the position of the head of the family. Sei Chi was stunned for a long time before he recovered. He said in disbelief, Xiao Jin, how dare you let an outsider intervene in the family's affairs? Are you trying to break the rules? Black Phantom is not an outsider. He is an elder of the Xiao faction. My child has already acknowledged him as his godfather. As soon as Xiao Jin finished speaking, The younger generation of the Shao faction bowed to Han Shao and called him Godfather, as if they had rehearsed it. Everyone was stunned. So shameless. Todd's face twitched. According to Black Phantom's previous behavior, his attitude was very aloof. He did not care about the internal changes of the Overmera, but now he intervened. They thought about it again. When Black Phantom was suspected, only Shao Jin spoke up for him. In the end, it was Shao Jin who found the real culprit and cleared Black Phantom's name. At that time, the other factions were only focused on winning votes from the higher-ups. The various factions suddenly realized that maybe it was because of this incident that Shao Jin connected with Black Phantom, and that was why Black Phantom was willing to help Shao Jin. Shao Jin must have put in a lot of effort to rope Black Phantom in as a relative of the Shao faction. Although the various factions were not satisfied, they could not deny that Shao Jin's actions had increased the overall strength of the Overmera. Black Phantom was a relative of the Overmera in name. Han Shao sat down and scanned the entire room. His eyes were full of danger. The higher-ups all looked away, not daring to look at him. There was no need to say anything. Han Shao just sitting there meant what he meant. A silent threat. The situation became awkward. The higher-ups who had voted were very uneasy and looked at each other quietly. Finally, one of the higher-ups could not help it. He wiped his sweat and said hesitantly, "I thought about it carefully and felt that Shao Jin is more suitable for the position of leader. I wonder if I could change my vote." According to the rules, they could not change their vote. However, Todd, who was hosting the meeting, cursed in his heart. Black Phantom was murderous at the side, so he did not dare to say no. He could only nod. After the first person, there was a second and a third. Han Zhao's eyes scanned the room slowly. Whoever he saw, he would change his vote immediately. It was as if his eyes contained magic. Seichi was not satisfied. He wanted to fight for one last time, but Han Zhao's eyes turned to him. His eyes were like knives that pierced into his heart. A wave of fear exploded in his heart. Seichi was so scared that he immediately shut his mouth and watched the position that should have belonged to him slip through his fingers. There was no suspense in the result. Shao Jin won with an absolute majority of votes. The people of the Shao faction were overjoyed. The other factions could only hold their noses and congratulate Shao Jin one by one. The methods of the Shao faction made the other factions very uncomfortable, but the result was not unacceptable. At least Shao Jin was a veteran and had made a lot of contributions. Who would have thought that Shao Jin would win in the end? Todd's heart was bleeding. The home faction had been in charge of the Overmera for so many years. Now they had lost the power that they had always had and had their nest taken over. Todd knew that from today onwards, the home faction would gradually become a vassal faction. Seeing that the dust had settled, Han Shao put on his coat and turned to leave. The crowd automatically made way. The higher-ups who were congratulating Shao Jin also stopped and looked at Han Zhao's back. Although Shao Jin was the final winner, in the eyes of the crowd, the main character of this meeting was the Black Phantom. He only showed his face once, and Shao Jin's position was confirmed. This was the deterrence of overwhelming power. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.